You guys are going to fucking roast me about Pokemon this week, dude.
The heart wants what the heart wants.
Crusade podcast. We're diving right into it. We're slipping in. We're sliding in. All right. EJ Olson, Nick Durheim,
Slip.
Amanda a few words, and Chris Gillifor.
Slide.
Now recording.
You heard Keeley. They're getting away from the world premiere thing. Gyark was out of a job, and Craig was very gracious to his cousin to hook him up with this gig. So let's give Craig...
Golf clap.
Let's give them both credit.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks, Gyark. Which is Craig backwards, apparently. Didn't know that for a while.
That was such a fucking...
That's okay. Should have seemed more obvious than Mallow being a cloud, which was also very obvious, and I'm an idiot. Nick, what's up? Good week? Quiet week? Slow week?
Yeah, long week. Had the week off. Not last week, but the week before, and I'm still like recovering mentally from that. And I've got 3-day weekends coming at me, maybe 4 if I decide to take Fridays off. So it's just like I'm on the hill sliding down to the end of the year, and there's so many things that I have to do that aren't like that important or difficult to manage, but it's still like the mental preparedness that I have to put myself into is like daunting.
Feels bad.
So yeah, it's just, that's December, baby. What it is.
Maybe not last time we recorded, but the time before that, I was talking about how I was just feeling yucky, maybe had the malaise. And this was a week before Thanksgiving at this point. And I don't know what it was. I've just been having like just weird things happening. And then, of course, my health anxiety and general sense of doom is kicked into overdrive. So now you're, dude, major doom, dude. Yeah, so then that just makes everything worse. And then I was in Gresham. I was supposed to be in Gresham for like 10 days. And I was up there and like I got a fever 2 nights ago and pushed through it for a day. And then I was like, I think I'm sick, which sort of explains a lot of things. But like, I don't have any other symptoms. No GI symptoms, no upper respiratory symptoms. I'm just dying, I guess. So I drove back to Eugene for a couple days to at least be comfortable, you know, in my ailments. So I'm feeling a little bit better today, but sweaty and tired. And I didn't get a nap. Well, I got like a 5-minute nap because the damn yard crew showed up and started stomping on my roof and freaked my cat out. Such is life. Chris, you're high and tight, dude. With this haircut, you're not looking shaggy these days.
Yeah, buddy. I had an audition Saturday. I wanted to look like my headshot again.
Audition for what?
Kentucky Shakespeare up in Louisville. They've got a 3-show season in the summer. They pay, they house. It will be a good gig. Felt like I did pretty fucking good work out there on Saturday. And I've been telling my students, I'm teaching Shakespeare right now. Well, semester's almost over. It's finals week, but teaching Shakespeare this semester. And I've been telling them that I've just been like boiling to do some Shakespeare after months of teaching it and hearing it and talking about it. And I got to do that. So it's cool. So yeah, man, I'm back to actor Chris look, shorter hair and well-kept beard, except for all the parts that are fucking falling out at 32. It's fine.
It's falling out because it has to replace itself with grays. You know that, right? That's what's happening.
I really wish that were true, honest to God, but there are whole swaths of my face that just do not grow hair. They are bald as a baby's ass. And I really hope that it comes in with white, like those fine white, like old man beard hairs, because then at least it will be whole instead of looking like somebody drove a lawnmower across one side of my face and not the other side of my face. I'm fucking over it.
I believe in you, bud.
You need to go to a black barber and have him line you up and airbrush the shit out of you. Okay, just get that beard looking real crispy.
Smash cut to Chris coming out of the black barber shop with like black beard hair airbrushed over his very like light brown beard hair.
Make your chin look like LeBron James's hairline.
Like a motherfucking Lego piece, bro. You'd be looking like Tim Allen in the Santa Claus 2. Gets turned into a toy. He's like,
Oh, yeah, that is awful.
Action figure, EJ.
It's a collectible. You're both wrong.
Action finger? What are we talking about?
I was doing a Toy Story bit. My God, you heathens.
Nick, I'm so with you on the urge to just like live in my bear cave that is my apartment and not leave or exercise or do anything but wrap myself in blankets and play a cozy video game. End of the term, man. End of the year, end of the term. I'm tired. It's dark all the time. This is the way of things.
It's been a weird sort of run up to the holidays. Like, we usually put up our tree. Don't laugh at us, but the last 2 years we've put up our Christmas tree in September and made it a Halloween/Thanksgiving tree. 2 years ago it was earlier in the year, or in September, because the weather had already turned. You got to wait for the weather to turn. If it still feels like summer, it's obviously a no-go. But as soon as those leaves turn and it gets crisp outside. So this year that didn't happen until like end of the first week of October. Yeah, I mean it was kind of rough. So the tree didn't go up as early this year, so I'm feeling like I kind of lost out on that run up of just like being in the living room every night, watching something cozy or playing a game, and then being gone as much as I have been, back and forth. And I have been playing games though. Like Warzone died again. I know last year we talked about Warzone dying. It died to us, and then we got reabsorbed, and you've all heard that story. But now that Warzone 1 is like gone, haven't been playing a lot. Some of the guys on the Discord got like deep into DayZ, which, listen, I'll reserve my judgment.
You don't have to.
It's your podcast, buddy.
This is where you literally don't reserve your judgment. Display it proudly.
I think it would be interesting to like have them on. Shout out Jeff and Spencer and Ben, who has been on the podcast. And it's weird because like they don't know each other. Like I don't even know Ben. Ben is Brennan's friend from high school, and Jeff and Spencer are guys that I work with that I met here in Eugene. And now like they're all playing together. It's just very weird. And some nights I get on and Andrew's playing Rocket League with Jeff, and I'm just like, it's just like you know how internet friends are made. But Warzone dies, and we're talking about like, well, maybe we get into Sea of Thieves, or like, you know, we're trying to find something. And they settle on fucking DayZ. And even Andrew was like, I'm not touching that piece of shit. It's like every 30 days the servers wipe. So I have their DayZ chat muted, but every once in a while I peek in there and they're just like fully torqued. All right, not fully porked. They're fully torqued for this fucking game. You guys get all psycho about it, but your entire base disappears, all your progress and weapons and everything's gone, and you have to start over. That is psychotic to me. There's so many amazing games out there to play. I don't get it.
One must imagine Sisyphus happy, as Albert Camus put it.
Sisyphus, is he the one holding the world on his shoulders?
That is Atlas, and Sisyphus is the guy pushing the rock up the hill.
Yeah, that man.
The
rock,
it rolls
of course.
Down the hill, and then he has to go push it back up again. And you would know that if you played Hades.
Also, poison in the eyes sometimes, like eagles or whatever.
As a treat.
He's got different tortures.
They both have big rocks, okay? It just, forgive my confusion.
Or is that Prometheus?
Prometheus is in the cave.
No, he's the one that stole fire from the gods.
Yeah, his liver gets eaten out every day by crows.
He's chained to the rock. See, I don't know, man. It's all, whatever. I just think of Prometheus and Bob from Kablam on Nickelodeon.
Or the prequel to the Alien films.
That movie is underrated.
Prometheus and Bob, though, a underrated shout out. Big ups to Prometheus and Bob. Good claymation shorts. Same Kablam time, same Kablam network.
Kablam was the first thing in my life that I felt superior to my childhood peers because they don't get how good Kablam is. I was like, you guys are like, it was underrated, it was undersung, and I was like, no, you don't get it. Kablam is the best show on Nickelodeon, but you only got 18 minutes of it every week or whatever.
It's so telling that was your hipster moment, and Chris's is probably like Lynch's Dune, like just total full face mask.
Yeah, right. Chris was a big Street Sharks guy. Stop it.
No, I mean like the sense of superiority against your peers.
Oh, yeah.
When, honest to God, all very deserved joking at my expense aside, I wonder what that actually was that I'm like, dude, do you know about blank? Probably Super Mario RPG, a little bit. I mean, I feel like that was not a game my peers played. No, it's Metroid. We all know it's Metroid.
Based on Metroid sales figures, I mean, it's pretty fucking niche, so you're probably right.
I have no idea what mine would be. Probably music related.
Probably music related. Let's briefly, maybe. Well, I don't know how briefly. I was saying I've been playing games lately, but I don't know. I don't have like a ton to talk about. Like we did Mario RPG and Mario Wonder, which were the two big ones after Spider-Man. And I've been dabbling in some things. We'll talk about Pokemon in a bit. But Nick, anything on your holiday docket?
I've just been playing Okami, and that is a long game. It is longer than even the How Long to Beat would lead you to believe. Boy, that game doesn't end. And it feels like, oh man, this feels like we're coming up to the... Nope, there's more.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's nice, it's fun, but it is definitely unending. This is a game that you would never play, EJ.
So this is the Switch version.
Yes.
How are the controls?
Pretty standard controls. It's cool because if you're playing handheld, you can actually do the paintbrush stuff with the touchscreen. So that's actually pretty tight. I played that at a Les Schwab when I was getting my tires rotated or replaced. I can't remember which one, but yeah, that was clutch to just be able to do that on the touchscreen. Feels really good. But beyond that, it's like the pretty box standard PS2 controls. So the camera's a little bit wonky. It's not as refined as you would hope. And there's a lot of stuff. I mean, you could skip a lot of cutscenes, which is nice, but it's still not as rapid as you'd want it to be a lot of times. The pacing kind of bogs down with dialogue that's not going fast enough sometimes. Like there's parts that you can't skip where the dialogue is like clicking along really slowly, whereas every other time you can like skip it along as fast as you want. So that kind of unnaturally adds to the length.
Describe the gameplay to me. All I think of when I think of Okami is like the Wii waggle stuff and like the brushed art stuff, and like I picture that wolf, but like I don't know anything about this game.
Started as a PS2 game for the PS2 for the PlayStation 2, not a waggle game. PS2 game, but a great like upgraded port to the Wii and actually utilized the Wii remote really well. I actually played that version for like maybe 6 to 10 hours. Didn't get to like the first real dungeon in that version, but yeah, I get it. I mean, it totally feels like a Wii game, but it is a PS2 game. The gameplay is straight up. They made a Zelda where you are a wolf and is incredibly steeped in Japanese mythology, and it is crude in the way a lot of Clover games are crude, where the humor is very, very, very juvenile. Literally, characters talking about how stacked another like woman is. It's like, oh, that's great. Whatever. This is cringe as fuck, but it's kind of funny at the same time. It's like, oh, what? 2005.
Very
video games, right?
So is this a straight port of the Wii version, or is this like a remaster?
There was a remaster. Well, yeah, I'm not sure. There's a history of ports and remasters of this game. So there was a PS2 version, then a Wii port, and then a PS3 remaster, and then another remaster for PS4 and Switch in that generation. So I think this is like 2 steps removed from the original. And when this came out, it was the first time it came out to PC as well. And it was one of those games where the physics is locked to the frame rate, so they couldn't do a frame rate bump, so it's locked at 30. Everyone's unhappy about that always, but it's fine. It's like, it is an action game in the loosest sense of the term, because you run into these encounters in the open world, I say, but you know, and it sort of doesn't fade to black, but a arena pops up around you and you have to fight these mobs, and then it's X and Y combat attacks, heavy, light, your primary, secondary weapons, that kind of thing. And then you mix in the brush strokes that you learn that can sometimes be combat abilities, like you get a slash, or you can make cherry bombs, or you can plant trees in the ground, they'll pop up and they'll knock defenses away. So it's really creative and really interesting in the way you approach combat encounters, but it's not as intensive as other games made by the developer, their history being like Devil May Cry and Bayonetta and Resident Evil 2 and the like.
Is this a game I need to buy, Nick? Because this is a game I've had awareness of since its PS2 version, and then certainly on Wii. I was like, oh, this is a game I probably should play. And I haven't.
It's a game you would like if you have the patience. It's just a matter of, you cannot come into this thinking you're going to crank out an old game and get an experience. Like, you have to know that you're going to be playing this game for 50 hours. Because I'm like 30 plus hours in, and I'm like maybe 3/4 the way through. So it is a long game, and it is of that era of Zelda. It is very much akin to Wind Waker or Twilight Princess.
Way too much for me. You gotta be wearing the right hat, Chris.
That's true. Maybe I'll give it a try when I'm up in the old OR in a few weeks here. See how it feels, and then make a determination. It feels like a can I get it for $20 kind of thing. And I feel like,
and you wouldn't be able to get it physically. You have to import it. It was Japanese exclusive, but
oh god,
it's interesting in the way a developer that isn't Nintendo approaches a Zelda-like, in that this is much more combat and traversal focused. There's a lot more like jumping. Like there's actually platforming in this game, which is a blessing and a curse in that it's interesting and it changes the way that they can design the dungeons and the levels, but it is a PS2 game where you're jumping in 3D, so hit or miss, aka what I do with the platforms. But it's totally interesting, and it really shows the history of Platinum and their propensity towards very unique gameplay design, and I appreciate it for that. Like I really like how interesting it is. Like it's not rote in any way, and I would much rather play a weird game that is bordering on like mid sometimes than like a decent game that is not really trying anything new.
Chris, anything new? I know you said it's end of semester, holiday run up. It's kind of a weird time to be diving into new shit. You said in the group chat you started Dead Cells, which really got me excited.
Yeah, I've started a couple of things and I finished a couple of things.
Post-COVID hangover here.
I still got the congestion, man. And you know, some days better, some days where I'm like, this is annoying. But it's like solidly annoying tier. Not, I don't know, inhibiting in any way. I beat Final Fantasy 16. I have 2 things that I need to do to feel like I've done everything that I want to do with this game. The Platinum Trophy is locked to a second fucking playthrough on their New Game Plus mode, so I will not be platinuming it. So there's some icon-specific trophies, like landing every single one of Garuda's abilities in midair before landing in a single like combat encounter. I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to grind that just because it's not going to get me platinum, so I don't care. It's not something that I would naturally do through the course of a playthrough. But I'm done with that, and it's a pretty fantastic game. You know, some of the stuff that I shared on a previous episode that was bothering me, that is still true, but on some, it's very fucking good. Been talking to Brandon. He's going to be finishing it up probably in another week and wants to come on, and we could do a little section. Maybe we could just like record that right from jump, let Brandon head out, and then record the rest of the pod just so that it doesn't become too long because y'all didn't play this game. But that is very good. A very, very worthy entry into this storied franchise, and one that I felt very satisfied concluding. So I did that, and I felt like I needed a palate cleanser, so I popped Dead Cells in. I bought the Return to Castlevania bundle. It has all of the DLC at your encouragement. I mean, $20, that's a good buy. I had a couple days where I was just doing runs of Dead Cells, and it feels good, and the combat is good, and I like that I just like a lot of the systems of this game quite a lot, and how it feeds the progression from run to run, and stuff that holds over, stuff that doesn't, and I kind of know where I need to be heading to get my first escape, but I'm kind of, it's a little bit that, I said this in group chat, that there's not as much narrative driving me forward like there was with Hades, that I felt like every single run, even a failed run, was giving me meaningful new interactions with all of these characters that were really interesting and, yes, very hot, in a way that obviously a Souls by way of roguelike is not going to be. And also it's a little bit that I'm not really feeling yet the sense that my efforts from run to run are holding over that much. I'm also still, I mean, I've maybe done like 20 runs or 25 runs, and I'm still figuring out in some ways how this game works. I don't use my potions often enough. I feel like, especially because you get them fully refreshed when you clear a zone, I'm not using them often enough. I feel like I don't have a sense of the way that the damage scaling works, that I will see enemies in areas that I'm kind of like, you should not be hitting me for like more than a third of my health bar with a single fucking hit. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense that this like random trash mob zombie is diving at me. And now that I'm on the ramparts, he's hitting me for like 250 HP instead of hitting me for like 25 HP like he was hitting me in the initial area. So Yeah, I'm still kind of. I actually really like the ramparts. Like every time I find like a way to descend, I'm like, great. There's gonna be good shit down there. I'm gonna get some cells down there. Like mix it up. The combat's fucking amazing in this game. It is so fast. It feels so good. I love the fact that I can just like double up whatever kinds of weapons I want to double up on. If I want to go like double melee, I can. I don't know why you would, but you could, and I like that it would let me do that if I wanted to. But finding my way into a nice like close quarters weapon on one and a nice like ranged weapon on the other. I've been really feeling the triple knocked bow. Just for a pure like DPS perspective, it's got like a pretty far carry too, in a way a lot of the other weapons don't. I love the fact that this is in a lot of ways a love letter to indie games, that I keep in the first area like poking around corners and finding a new interactable area that's giving me a weapon from another really well-known indie game. Like I found a Hollow Knight bench and lantern and rested on it because obviously, and it gave me the pure nail. And I'm like, oh, what the fuck? And it's built that you can attack while you're moving, like you can in Hollow Knight. You can't attack and move in Dead Cells, not really. And that you get an automatic critical hit if you bounce off the top of an enemy by attacking downward in the air. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. Like the Hyper Light Drifter Sword that auto also equips the gun that you get increased melee damage based on how many projectiles from the gun that you've put into that specific enemy. Yeah, but it just feels a little hamster wheelie. So I haven't booted it up in like a day and a half, but it's a game that I could definitely see myself throwing in and doing like 5 or 6 runs and seeing what happens. And like, today I'm not really feeling it. Maybe I'll be feeling it tomorrow, kind of a thing.
It's very like Rogue Legacy in that way, where there's not a lot driving you forward other than like, oh, I know that each of these areas has a sick boss that I want to kill. And Dead Cells in particular is like very top heavy, where it's a lot of dying early on or a lot of really slow runs trying to stay alive. The thing about that game is just like, you just want to basically grind out those first 2 areas a bunch, because there's so many skills to unlock and so many things to start buffing. So like, it can be a little bit of a grind at first. And for me, the loop, I got into that loop immediately. I was like we've talked about recently, of just like spawn, die to something that I know I shouldn't die to, like rinse, repeat. It's very cool. It's very Meat Boy in that way. It's just boom, boom, boom. But it is top heavy. And so if you can't get over that initial hurdle, and it took me a little bit to like kind of figure out like, okay, here are each of the areas, here are each of the bosses, and just figuring out that whole loop. And once you start uncovering some of the secrets and some of the abilities that unlock, we were texting about it this weekend, every level has hidden areas that you won't be able to access. Some are like timed, some require keys that you might find later, but some are like based on like things you unlock between runs. And once you have those abilities unlocked, you open up bigger parts of the map that they always, of course, spawn in different spots. So you feel like that progression is paying off, even if you're not really getting past the first level or two. And so I like that a lot, that you're always sort of discovering a secret and you still feel like you're making progress, even if you're kind of in a blender at first. Dude, 5 DLCs, and they've all reviewed. I think the worst reviewed one is an 86 on OpenCritic, which is 3 points below the base game. And they go as high as like 93. Like for $20, there's so much amazing content. I haven't even played any of the DLCs, so I also bought this.
Well, I'll tell you, that's part of what I am finding myself in my ignorance is I don't know what any of these fucking areas are. And so at a certain point I had to go and look and like, okay, which of these are the DLC areas? Because I was wandering into stuff and having it be like my second, or in some cases like third environment, and just getting fucking waxed within the first couple of rooms, because it's a DLC area that is intended to be played by advanced players. And I am not that. Even the Castlevania one, which is so sick. Like the covers of the Castlevania songs are just like absolutely face melting, like awesome hard rock covers. It feels so cool to be running around that area. And especially because this game is just like Castlevania as fuck. It is so Castlevania. It's a perfect marriage. I found some of those things that you're talking about, EJ. Like I can grow the like little cell culture vines and climb those. I can use one of the types of sarcophagi to teleport to close by areas that usually has like a little secret or a power up. Or an elite enemy or something. And that's pretty much it. I don't know if I'm just not exploring enough in the prisoners' quarters and like the first couple areas after. I end up in the sewers a lot for a second area. I end up in the Arboretum a lot for the second area, which is a DLC area. I've done the ramparts a bunch, and I've made it to the Stilt Village, I think 3 times, and only had one that I meaningfully was progressing. That I meaningfully progressed in that area. Yeah, I don't know. It's cool. It is, and the different environments are really fucking different, which I appreciate and think that, even in Hades, to a certain extent, it wasn't really that, like, they weren't that meaningfully different, the different areas, other than, the second area that's named as Asphodel, that it's like, it's the lava level, it's the obligatory lava level. But other than that, they all felt like kind of samey, just with some different traps. But all of these are way different and work way different and have very different types of enemies, which I really appreciate. And I will keep playing this game, but I'm not going to fall down this in the same way that I fell down Hades. And that's okay. Great fucking game.
I am curious to revisit this. I'm not sure when I'll get to it at this point, but I wonder how much that sort of stilts the pacing or maybe discourages people from, like you said, you went into an area, you're like, fuck this. Because as I recall, at least once upon a time, like, you couldn't go into a new area and then be like, oh, fuck this, I'm going to leave. I think you could in Rogue Legacy. Like, if you stumbled into an endgame area, you could just back out and go back to the easier area. This game is not like that. It's like you end your run in one area and you advance to the next area. And so that is like, well, this run's fucking over, I guess. So I'm a little disappointed to hear that they did it that way. I guess, I don't know. It just feels like the DLC should be its own thing, and not all intertwined with the vanilla game. So that's a little bit of a bummer to hear. So I don't know. I'll get to it eventually. I've bought this game so many fucking times, guys. I've bought I don't know how many, three versions on Switch, or I only bought 2 versions on Switch. The base game and then the game of the year. No, I think I maybe bought 3. There were like 3 DLC versions, and then I bought it on PlayStation, and now I've since bought the Castlevania complete package.
Did you get it on PlayStation because you thought for some reason that you would like try to get the platinum? That sounds like a nightmare platinum.
No, I don't think I will have a platinum this game. I just got it because that's a superior version to the Switch version, and like is well chronicled in this podcast, I would like to play a 4K version of this in 10 years, not a 720p version of it. So
was going to say some of the weapons that are particularly animated, I guess, or busy in terms of their animation, cause some occasionally major performance problems in this game. On the complete edition, the Vorpchucks, the Vorpchaku, the 2 like frying pan nunchucks, yeah, huge. Like, I get into a new area, and the first time I start like mashing that button and starting to combo, I'll have like a full freeze for a second and a half, and then it will like proceed with the animation. So I've just like stopped using that weapon because I'm like, this is like, I can't get in the flow of this combat that is very fast twitch and requires me to be really smart with my dodges and really precise with my dodges. Because otherwise I'm gonna fucking die. Like, you go from 0 to dead so fast in this game.
no, I understand though what you said about, in contrast to Hades, how even when you die, you're still progressing the story in a meaningful way. Like, that does sound appealing to me, just from like a bird's eye view. Dead Cells is a game to me where I don't care about the narrative. I don't stop, and I don't want to read the journals or whatever. I'm like, I want to get to the boss. I want to get better. I want to, rinse, repeat. And that's sort of the loop. I'm either like whole hog, the narrative it needs to be Last of Us, or it needs to be just like mindless, whatever. Not a lot of in between. So I will get to Hades eventually. I get to all this eventually, whatever. There's too much to play, okay? It's too much.
There is. I also started Pikmin 2, and I've only done a little bitty bit of Pikmin 2, but it feels good to be playing Pikmin again and like discovering things. And I'm just, having never played the sequel to this game that I played like 5 or 6 times, I was just delighted at like, oh my God, we're going to Olimar's home planet. Like, that was just like the coolest fucking thing to me. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, of course he has a home planet. And like, oh, his company's going bankrupt. That sucks. And this weird like capitalist overlord ship is like barking orders at me. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird, but also kind of funny because they're kind of aware of the fact that it's weird. I don't know. I don't have enough on that to say anything about it other than it just feels like a great winter game, and I'm excited.
Was this one of the games in the top 100 where you're like, Pikmin 2 would probably make it, but Chris hasn't played it, so we'll go Pikmin 1, similar to Luigi?
No, Pikmin 3. Pikmin 3 is better than
Pikmin 3.
Pikmin 1 and 2, and I think Pikmin 4 might be better than Pikmin 3.
Was Pikmin 1 that made the list then?
Yeah.
Okay. Pikmin 4 might be the best, huh?
Oh, and I'm not gonna be anywhere near done enough with the franchise to do that on this year's revision of the top 100, but that's all right.
We can put off the top 100 to whenever we want to. It's our podcast.
Yeah, it doesn't have to happen in right at the new year for sure. There's a lot of timely content we have to get through between potential reviews and the league. So after Super Mario RPG, Brennan and I sat down to try and platinum Nobody Saves the World, which I had played on Xbox when it was on Game Pass previously at launch. A game that I bid on was that 2021?
I think that was last year.
Beginning of 22. It was the first game, I think, of the year that I bid on. Sniped it from Nick. Got like 10 or 12 points, like a pretty reasonable score. I really liked it. I played it for like 7 to 10 hours or whatever, like not a ton, but I liked the loop of it. It's sort of a quirky behemoth, sort of a in that vein as far as like style and humor.
It's got a similar lineage of like, I think a lot of the developers at Drinkbox started out as Flash game devs.
Yeah.
Just based on the type of humor and the references that they made in Guacamelee. Like there's like Homestar Runner posters in Guacamelee. So you kind of get the vibe that they're raised on that kind of similar internet culture.
But this is a dungeon crawler, and the whole conceit is like you're a character who can transform into on the fly instantly at any time. Like there's like 12 or more forms. We haven't even unlocked them all, so I don't know. And each of them have their own unique powers, and as you're crawling these dungeons, I mean, the loops, you go into a procedurally generated dungeon, you fucking kill the shit, you get the treasure, you unlock some sort of currency that unlocks the next area of the main map. It's very like by the book in that regard, but the whole time you're like leveling up each individual transformation. So you're incentivized to use, not just through like, oh, you can only unlock this area with this certain character, or there's like one of the transformations is an egg, into like advance, you have to lay the egg in this fucking giant bird's nest like 5 times. And so it's like dumb shit, right? Where it's like fun uses of the transformation, but then you're incentivized to go into a dungeon and actually kill shit with all these different forms. Like one of them is a fucking bodybuilder, and you're just like rolling barbells at enemies, which is like hilarious. And he's just grunting like a fucking sweaty man. So anyway, it's a lot of fun. We played it like 3 different nights. We've probably put 8 hours into it, and then Brennan kind of fell off, and then now he's in Vegas. So I had to switch from that, guys. This is not going to be a deep dive by any means. Okay.
Not going to sugarcoat it.
Tell him what you've been playing, EJ. You tell our listeners.
Okay, I said on the pod, right, that back in May when we were deep into Zelda, my stupid asshole brother bought me a copy of Pokemon Violet. And all year he had been telling me, he's like, no, trust me. They're amazing games. It's the best Pokemon games I've played in years. You're going to love them. Shiny hunting is great. Like all these different systems that they implemented for completing your Pokedex and exploring the world. He's like, but I don't fucking listen to this asshole because he played Skyrim and he plays Call of Duty and Rocket. Like, what the fuck does he know about games? If I said, what's your favorite platformer? He would be like, what does that mean? You know what I mean? So I can't take his fucking word for it when he says, I'm like, fuck this game. We've talked all this shit about Pokemon in the world. Fuck Game Freak, and they can't make a performative game to save their life. A bunch of boomers over there who haven't been able to do shit since 2nd gen Pokemon. They weren't getting my money. So this piece of shit buys me the fucking game. And so now I'm obligated to play it. At some point, I put it off. He finally is like, well, play Pokemon with me. When I was looking for a game to play, and I started it. And I very reluctantly texted you guys. I said, oh no, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are good games. No!
Traitor!
I hate saying it out loud.
You and my brother, Anakin!
I still stand on principle. I would not have bought this game as much as Drew said it was awesome. Drew loved it. As much as Andrew was up my ass about it, I still am like, no, I would not give them my money. But it was a gift. So I had nothing to lose by trying it. As was, by the way, Sword and Shield. Brandon gave me a copy of Sword. He bought the double pack and he gave me a copy of Sword because he's a sweetheart. I've restarted that game twice now and still haven't beaten it because it's just not fucking fun. But I gave it a go because it was a gift, and I know you don't want to be like, I'm going to give it to College Tribe because it was a present for my friend, Dude, this freaking got me. They do a lot really well. It has issues, performance aside, which the performance has been not great, but like it's no worse than what I experienced in Arceus. I haven't had crashes or visual glitches or any like insane. It's just like it runs at a shitty frame rate and it like doesn't look amazing, but it looks better than Arceus. Like it just straight up looks better. It's not Zelda by any stretch, but like it looks nicer than the last open world Pokemon experience that I sat through miserably for 6 hours. The big draw that I had no idea about, and Andrew, who put 200 hours into this game, completing his Pokedex and doing all the shiny hunting and doing raids, which raids are fucking great, by the way. Raids are awesome. I'm just blown away. Like Pokemon, they did things that are actually fun. Dude, the multiplayer in this game is amazing. You literally get into a room with your friends and you are dropped into an open world with them and your saves are unique to yourself, but you're just in the world with them. You can play the game beginning to end with your friends. There are like little quirks with it, like certain cutscenes, like they disappear and whatever, but like we just join each other's world and we run around and he's showing me around the world and he's like, I'm stopping at all the Pokemarts / Poke Centers, like getting fast travel areas knocked off so that I can come back and quickly do things. We're just like doing raids together. I mean, it was insane. Like, this is all I've ever wanted out of Pokemon. And I had no idea you could do it. He didn't know you could do it for 200 hours. He played this game for a year before he realized, wait, we can just join each other? It's like a Pokemon MMO. It's crazy.
How does this work in terms of things like random encounters, trainer battles, gym experiences? Like, what does that look like in a multiplayer experience? And what have you done? Because like it's cool to like run around together, but like that's only part of the rest of it. So I don't know. Like, what have you been able to do in these lobbies?
I don't know how fighting works because we haven't done any fighting that isn't raids. And raids are like, it's like a team of 4 versus 1 really big scary Pokemon.
That's how it was in Sword and Shield.
Okay, I don't know. I never played it in Sword and Shield, so I don't know if they work the same way, but they're not turn-based. They're like timer-based, and it all depends on like the strength of your Pokemon and the strength of your enemy. So you're not taking turns and like, oh, it's waiting on me to make a decision now. It's like timer-based, so you're having to be active and think quickly before, because you'll be in the middle of a menu and your enemy will make a move and you get locked out of making a decision. It's quick and it's arcane. Sometimes you're like, well, I don't understand why I wasn't able to make a move here. But it's all based on how strong your Pokemon are. So you actually have to like craft a move set that makes sense. It's not all just attacks, right? Like you have to buff and you have to think about typing and you have to like worry about max training, EV training your Pokemon to get max stats to take on 6 and 7 star raids. And it's like actual strategy in a Pokemon game, intentional strategy, not just like somebody breaking the game open and making it hard for themselves. It's crazy. As far as battling, like in the open world, like if you're in the open world and you run into a Pokemon, they just basically can sit there and run around you while you fight. You don't fight together, which is something that hopefully in the next game they can get over that hurdle and you can choose to do double battles, which would be really cool. But like I run into a Pokemon, all the Pokemon are in the overworld, which was something that Let's Go did, which was amazing. That this game or that Sword and Shield kind of did in the wild area. This game is just across the board. Everything's out in the open. And the diversity of the types of Pokemon you're finding in these different biomes as you traverse the open world. Like I've been consistently, wow, maybe all these Pokemon dorks were right this whole time. And we just been sitting here talking shit. There's a lot more the game does well. There's some major stuff the game like needs to fix if they want this to be a working formula in the future. Like lack of level scaling, it kind of unravels everything. Like you kind of get dropped in the beginning of the game. Here's the conceit of this world. Now you can go take on any of the 8 gyms in any order you want. You can go do any of the Titans, which are these like giant Pokemon you have to go take down in any order you want. And then there are the bases for the new Team Rocket, whatever their name is, and you can go do those in any order you want. And that's great. I love that. I'm like, oh, I have all these objectives on the map. I can go where I want. I can explore what I want. But then you end up at a gym where you have a level 60 Pokemon fighting you, or you end up with level 50 wild Pokemon. So that's a little frustrating. My starter's a level 100 now because I've just been raiding and like grinding things out, catching Pokemon. I'm maxed out on my main guy, so now I'm just breezing through the game, taking down gyms with no competition. So some people might argue that's like bad, right? I love it because I'm here to catch all the Pokemon. I'm here to explore, catch everything, do a little shiny hunting, do these really actually difficult raids. Like we've had 4 people in a party every night doing these raids. There's a lot the game does really well. And as much as I have been very outspoken in my thoughts that we should not give credit to a game or a studio who does things that the industry has been doing for years and then we give them credit, I think a lot of that is not what this game is doing. There are some things where you're like, wow, I wish this existed 10 years ago. But there are actually like legitimately good things that work really well about this game. And now that it's, I don't know, every time I go on Reddit and look at like Scarlet Violet patch and everyone's just bitching and moaning that nothing's been fixed. But I'm like, this has been nothing like what I saw when this game dropped. This game got like a 6 out of 10 across the board because people were so mad about how bad it performed. I haven't seen any of that.
2 questions for you, EJ. How many hours do you think you've spent with this game so far?
20.
And if you don't have the time, because I don't know if you have to finish a game in order to give it your review consensus on it or whatever, but say you're at a preview of this, what would you score this game? Like right off the get?
That's hard because there's a lot I have not experienced. I don't know how to put a numerical value on this yet, especially considering I gave Spider-Man 2 an 80. There's just a lot of context there you have to consider.
I feel like you gotta, for your own sake, you need to free yourself. You need to unyoke yourself from the burden of thinking that all of your scores are going to exist on the same continuum in context of one another. Like
no, that's exactly it.
It's not fair to you to be, well, if I gave Spider-Man 2 an 80, then this is like a 65 then probably. Like it's probably 15.
The Gubrick is law.
It's probably 15 points worse, right? Than Spider-Man 2.
Spider-Man 2 is a much more competent game. Like
it's a better game in literally
way.
every way. Well, and better than its predecessors also, but that's a conversation we've already litigated, and we'll litigate again when we redo the top 100. And you're like, it's Spider-Man 1, and I'm like, it's Spider-Man 2. Maybe we can compromise on Miles Morales. Because that's just fucking crazy to get an inferior game in literally every way except for story, which you agree is the least important part of a video game, and also boss fights, which I think if you went back and replayed Spider-Man 1, you would not feel so rosy about.
EJ, get Pokemon Violet a score right now.
Yeah, score it!
With your heart.
I'm just going to give it around 8 right now, but there's a lot I haven't done. The performance is like disappointing, but I've also come to expect that from most Switch games. Like this doesn't seem like Zelda ran like this a lot of the time. Not as much as Pokemon. Like Pokemon definitely runs worse, like for sure, but it runs better than Arceus. So far, I've had a lot more fun with it than I had with Diamond Pearl, than I had with Sword Shield, than I had with Arceus, than I had with not with Let's Go. I fucking adored Let's Go in every way. But it's scratching the itch that Let's Go scratch. Like, I'm not fighting any trainers in the wild. They don't auto-fight you anymore. I see those guys, and I ride by on my Miradon, and I give them the fucking finger. I don't fight any trainers anymore because I don't want to. I don't need to. I grind raids, I get experience candies, I level my Pokemon up, and I just catch the shit out of Pokemon, and I explore this world. And the whole system they have at the beginning of the game where you're like, it's woven into the narrative or whatever. You get this Pokemon called Miradon, me ride on, and you can literally ride on him, and as you progress you beat these titans, which, like I said, these giant Pokemon, and each one you beat you unlock a new ability upgrade for his traversal. And so it's like, now I can, and he's basically a fucking lizard motorcycle. It's completely ridiculous, but you get on the guy and now he can go faster, now he can jump higher, now he can scale walls. So now it's like playing a Zelda game where you're climbing walls but no stamina, and so it just opens the world to you. And that was a really cool conceit. I really liked how that worked. And I love just giving the keys, literally in this case, and being told to like, hey, go do what you want to do. If you want to catch Pokemon, this is the path you'll take. If you want to beat the Elite Four, this is the path you'll take. You know, if you just want to dick around and raid with your friends, go do, I really like that. So anyway, eventually we'll do a proper dive on this game once I have played through more of it and written down my thoughts. But here I am eating a fucking shoe on the podcast because, I mean, I just expected guys what Sword and Shield did, which was everyone gave it these review scores. They said the performance is rough, step forward in some places, step back from Let's Go in other places, but like brownie points for trying. And I was like, no, this game is fucking boring. Like Sword, I would give a 65 to Sword. It's boring. There's so many issues with how Game Freak was trying to design a 3D game and the way it gated you and the way it funneled you into this wannabe open world, and it was just stilted, stitched together like Frankenstein of what a video game should be in the current year. And I fucking was so bored. And the only reason I even pursued and pushed through 6 gyms or whatever was because I'm trying to do my living decks in my Pokemon home. It was like a necessary evil. I didn't have fun at any point in that game. This game, I'm having a ton of fun. So, I just sort of expected that because you see all the same criticisms, you see all the same, praise, brownie points for this. And I'm like, no, fuck brownie points. And now I play it, I'm like, oh no, this actually has legitimately great things about it. And it is, in fact, hindered by some of those bad things, but it's not like Sword and Shield or Diamond and Pearl. And that is just a mediocre experience further languishing because of its poor development. Like, no, it's actually a good game, still languishing because of its poor development, but at least there's a good game under there. So who would have fucking known?
This is wild. I'm going to have to go re-up my search for a copy at a price that I'm willing to pay. Because now I'm sort of like, I gotta kind of know for myself. Maybe that's my winter game with a little Pikmin on the side. Maybe it's Pokemon time. I don't know.
Yeah, and again, bear in mind
So funny.
that my motivation for playing this is to finish my living decks.
Same in Pokemon Home.
And because I've played 90% of this in multiplayer with 2 to 4 people, has sort of obviously impacted like how I'm playing and how fun that is. If you're a guy who just wants to go from A to Z and fight all the gyms, like maybe this isn't as exciting for you, or maybe it is because it's open world. Now, I don't know. I mean, everyone's coming at it from a different perspective. I'm also a guy who thought Pokemon Let's Go is the best Pokemon game since Heart Gold, Soul Silver, which is apparently the hottest Pokemon take you can have. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. Pokemon is so widely played by so many different types of people that when you kind of boil it all down and round it down to a single number, it turns into a really weird sort of amalgamation of opinions and review scores and what have you. So yeah, just looking at Sword and Shield with a solid 80 on OpenCritic, like an IGN 9,
That's
GameSpot
crazy.
9, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, IGN 6, GameSpot 8. So it's like 71 total score. Pokemon Let's Go at 81. Like, people like Let's Go more than Sword and Shield, but if you pulled if you started a Reddit thread, you'd probably get as many people saying that one is trash and the other one's awesome in both threads. Like, it's just ridiculous. There's so many different types of players of the franchise, and it's so huge. So I wonder, does it seem like there's a clear path forward from Scarlet and Violet, or are they going to keep having to try to please multiple different audiences? Like, it seems like Scarlet and Violet has distinct paths for very specific types of players, and is that openness suitable for those that want to ignore the one thing and do the other? Are the seams too easily seen? Is that a cohesive enough experience that people are satisfied? It seems like they swung and missed in a lot of people's cases. So I mean, it's working for you because EJ, like you've always talked about, you're very easy to put on the blinders and focus in on the one thing you're trying to do, and you're getting great enjoyment out of that, and that's awesome. But I don't know if I could pick up this game and have that same experience. Like, I'm not sure if that would work for me.
Did you play Sword Shield?
No, it looked like another, like a 3DS rehash.
Yeah, it was
And
bad.
by the time I played through Sun and Moon, and that was a lifeless experience for me. I had no reason to go. Like, they did an Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. Like, can you believe that they did that?
It's gross.
Talk about just milking it. So sad. But I mean, X and Y I actually really liked. And then Sun and Moon was like, okay, this is getting really tiresome. And then the next 2 entries after that was pretty sad. So I did Let's Go, and that was a great breath of fresh air. And then I bought and I tried Diamond and Pearl, but that was equally lifeless. And I got that same kind of vibe from Sword and Shield. So I never really had any interest in checking it out.
That's like right on the money, dude. Like, I don't know if you like this game, but I think there's more potential here for you. If they would just focus on refining the open world, refining the formula for how a player progresses. And open world games are tough because, if you level scale, you never feel like you're actually progressing. And if you don't level scale, you're still kind of stuck on this linear path. And so I don't know how you get over that in this world, the way that because you don't feel that in like a Breath of the Wild or a Tears of the Kingdom, right? Even though there's clearly like enemies that are too high a level for you, you never feel like, oh, I can't go over there until I've progressed. And so it still always feels open to you, but you still have that sense of progression of getting more powerful. So I don't know.
It's hard in an RPG, and I think level scaling is the cleanest way to do it so that you can truly go wherever you want, and wherever you go after that is going to feel appropriate to where you are at that moment in the game. And then it's a matter of, do they implement that in a way that actually feels meaningfully challenging? But that's, the difference between an RPG, a JRPG, a turn-based JRPG no less, and an open world adventure game like Zelda, right? That everything's pretty much going to feel the same except for bosses. Listen, I don't know why you guys hate Sword and Shield so much. Like, I understand that there are some things in that game that I felt were silly, but it is the best looking and best performing Pokemon game on the Switch. And I really liked Let's Go. I think that's my second favorite Pokemon game ever. But I don't think that because we're recreating Kanto and making it feel like this storybook almost, I don't know that it does as much as Sword and Shield does in terms of its like diversity of environments. It has a ton of good ideas, like the mix of Pokemon of the overworld and Pokemon in tall grass, wanting to implement some of the things from Let's Go that were clearly working. The wild area is awesome. The different Pokemon that spawn in different like weather conditions. So every time you're in a different area, it's like, oh, I didn't know that monster could show up. That's really cool. The intersection of Pokemon and sports and these like gym leaders that are like literal gym leaders finally, and everybody's so involved, like the community's really involved, and they talk about like, they acknowledge finally of like, oh, it's kind of weird that this fucking 10-year-old is like running train on Pokemon League licensed gym leaders, and like this hasn't happened in a long time. They're like, this is really strange and interesting. And the story is whatever the story is. It's a fucking Pokemon game. The story is get badge, beat champion, hooray me, finish Pokedex maybe. That's the story of every fucking Pokemon game. So I don't know. I don't get the hate for that installment on this particular podcast.
Like Nick said, the Pokemon formula isn't for him anymore. And Sword and Shield was another, to me, lifeless, cobbled together, barely performative.
What's a barely performative? There are no performance problems with Pokemon Sword and Shield. Not that any other Switch game doesn't have. The
wild area is like an unplayable nightmare most of the time. And I hated going, again, from Let's Go, going to, now we're going to gate everything. And so you have these sections where it feels like a 3DS game where you can't control the camera, and you're going from little room to little room, essentially in between black load screens. And then you have the wild area where, okay, theoretically, this is like what I want, but now it's gated to these little regions that you have to travel to. It just did not feel cohesive, and it was very standard in the Pokemon formula. So for the people who like that, it worked. It kind of just doesn't work anymore for me, which is why even like Diamond and Pearl, I played through, sort of the trudge through it.
Lifeless, like, come on.
Oh yeah, I mean, but to me, that game was that was as faithful a remake as you could make. It's like, pick a lane for some of these people reviewing it. Do you want a faithful fucking remake that feels like a classic Pokemon game? Or do you want them to completely reinvent the wheel like they did with Let's Go? No matter what, people are going to complain. So anyway, this is the first game that feels like the Pokemon formula has been upended and iterated on in a meaningful way.
We're not going to praise Sun and Moon for doing the same thing a generation ago and doing it with some of the most inventive monster designs they'd had in fucking forever.
Nah, Sun and Moon is mid.
Super mid. And it was the same formula. You just weren't getting badges. You were still fighting gym leaders, though.
No, it got rid of HMs.
Great change.
The way you traverse through all of that, I thought that the world design was interesting and actually culturally specific instead of just being fucking general ass Eurotrash bullshit. Like, it was really fucking specific to a very specific culture. It was done lovingly. The monster designs were rooted in that. Sun and Moon fucks. Who doesn't like Sun and Moon? That's crazy.
They're okay. They're okay. You're also a Pokemon diehard in a way that Nick and I are very clearly not.
What does that mean? Like, you have a living Dex too. Does that make you more of a diehard than me just because I've also played every Pokemon game? I'm not a fucking diehard.
I haven't played all of them. I don't have an interest to. I think at this point, I am like a every few generations kind of lad because there is not meaningful changes between the generations at this point. That's what I was feeling between X and Y and Sun and Moon is like, this is the game I played a couple years ago. What on Hawaii but not? So it was whatever. I mean, the things I did like about X and Y was you had a ton of Pokemon variety in the first couple areas, so you felt like you could have a really interesting team right off the get-go, which it took them 20 years just to get that far. So I was happy about that. The story was batshit bad.
They're all bad.
It was ridiculous.
They're all bad.
Chris, X and Y reaches a new high with the weird giant man who is ancient, who's like thousands of years old. It is truly bad. Whereas everything else is just kind of boring.
Game with a good story is Black and White, and it is buried under the worst designs they have ever done.
People think Black and White might be the pinnacle of the series because of its decision to forego any legacy Pokemon. That's the first time in my life at 17 years old. That was the first time, maybe I was 18 by that point, that I ever said, I am not going to play this game. I got to the first gym and I said, nope. But now looking back, and again, this is because every Pokemon game is the first Pokemon game for a whole generation of kids, right? And so it's just hard to look at Pokemon as a legacy franchise and possibly get a consensus because so many generations of children are playing this. So whatever. I don't get how those games are as highly touted as they are, and people are like clamoring for a fucking Black and White remake this next year.
Black and White
nah.
does have legacy Pokemon.
Yeah, you have to beat the game first, though.
Yeah.
They added 150 new Pokemon, and those are the only Pokemon you encountered until you had finished the game and you opened up the National Dex.
Black and White 2 might be different.
Isn't that true of Gen 3?
No. That phase.
Also, Gen 3 had one electric Pokemon, so we can be unhappy about that, and it's 700 water areas.
It had 3.
had one worth talking about. Manectric is a pimp. Everyone else sucked.
Electric's so incredibly overrated. I can't believe that's...
Only because he's the only good electric Pokemon in that entire generation. Why do you think that is?
Plusle and Minun exist.
Yeah, for doubles battles. What are you doing? Stop.
The same as I do with any other
they
electric
made more
type.
Pikachus. Good.
Spark, Thunderbolt, Thunderwave. That's it. That's all you
my
need.
2 electric attacks and my paralyzed give.
That is an electric Pokemon. That is all you need it for.
Anyway, this game is a game that, performance issues aside, Nick, I think you would find the most appealing of any game since X and Y if you were to give it a go. I'm not necessarily recommending it to you, knowing what I know about sort of your taste in Pokemon and all that. Chris, I am recommending it to you because you are sick like me and want to keep up your Pokemon home.
Dog, I'm playing it. It's over. It's over.
I think there's going to be a lot to like here. It's got its issues. But for once, the things it does well actually excite me, and it's not just the fucking same carousel of like, again, giving Game Freak a pat on the back for making an attempt to make a competent game like all of their peers have been doing for decades, you know? So it doesn't get that like pass because it's a bunch of boomer Japanese men struggling to make a modern game, you know, the way that all these fucking Pokemon reviewers are so apt to give. I just don't understand. It's just, well, good try. Golf clap. All right. 9 out of 10. And it's like, no. Judge this like any other studio.
Struggling indie developer Game Freak.
Dude, for real.
Yeah, they get a pass on too much. It's also, and we've talked about this with regards to like the Nintendo bump, quote unquote, that like if you have a formula that is just fucking good, and even if you're not meaningfully iterating on that formula, it's still going to be solid, if unspectacular.
We don't see that with any other developer.
No other developer has a formula that is as replicably good as Nintendo's stable of IPs. Name one that does.
And they don't sell as well if they do.
Exactly.
If they do take a swing, it's not going to make the money, and they can't keep pumping more releases out. Like, I think of Monster Hunter Stories, and Stories 2 was the best Pokemon game I've played since X and Y. And that game probably didn't sell close to, like, what? Maybe it cracked 1 million if they're lucky. Monster Hunter now just getting this like big shine, but yeah, that's a great game. That's a great JRPG. It's a great children's like first run at a JRPG, but there's no way that any other dev can do what Pokemon does. So it's hard to compare it to other RPGs.
It's really hard to compare. I mean, the brand identity of Nintendo and their IPs is doing a lot of heavy lifting a lot of the time, and sort of being for kids and being tied to the nostalgia of being young. And Nintendo proper makes a lot. They just make good games consistently. They do make good games, but so do a lot of other studios. And people are so quick. They're so quick to, like, people were ready for Starfield to fail. And while Starfield is not for me, it did not live up to the hype of something like Skyrim or a classic Bethesda RPG. Is a really competent game. It's a pretty game. Some people are liking it, and I just can't help but think of how quick people were to, like, oh, they can't wait for this to be a fucking failure. People don't do that with Nintendo. It's the opposite. People want Nintendo games to be better than they generally are. And I just don't understand how that came to be and when that happened. And anyway, that's not necessarily relevant, I guess, right now. But I am eating crow on Pokemon Scarlet Violet. I haven't beaten it. Who knows where it'll land? It's certainly the most fun I've had since Let's Go, which was 5 years ago now. And I look forward to beating it. That was a very long Pokemon rant.
Always is.
So this is our honorable mention list that we have been doing on and off through the year ever since our top 100 episode where we ranked our top 100 video games of all time. And so this was just a way for us to give shine to games that may not have been talked about, that are good on the platform that we liked or loved, but just weren't quite good enough to crack the top 100. So finally, it's been months. We are on the Wii U. We are mercifully almost done with consoles, and we can jump over to Nintendo handhelds after this, which will be a lot of fun. Wii U. Chris, you want to go first, bud?
Sure. I was tempted to do Nintendo Land, but I feel like I talked about that a little bit on the top 100 and made my case for that before it got cut. So I'm going to skip that. I'm going to do Yoshi's Woolly World.
Nice.
I think that is a really lovely little platformer. I think that it was genuinely... It sat more in the realm of easy to learn, but challenging to get everything and make sure that you have all of the different, collectibles that they throw at you through the course of the game. And it's just one of the most gorgeous, lovingly crafted games that I think Nintendo's done in recent memory, that they were like, how can we make a Yoshi game have some uniqueness in a market where we already have like 5 platforming staples that all kind of know what they're doing? And like, what does Yoshi do besides, like, it's Mario, but he makes eggs and throws them. So they came up with the conceit of everything's going to be made out of yarn, and how all of these different things were like handmade initially before they got to programming. And yeah, it's just lovely. It's beautiful. It was fun to play. A competent experience, very solid, middle of the road Nintendo platformer that had a gorgeous aesthetic, and a sadly inferior sequel that was fully baby's first platformer in Yoshi's Crafted World, which is sad. But such is the fate of like C-tier Nintendo franchises, is most of the time it's going to be baby's first, or they're not going to sell any units. But Woolly World is awesome. I've got a yarn Yoshi amiibo on my entertainment center. And it's like one of my favorite fucking amiibo. Just this. Yep, there he is. It's beautiful.
I played this a little bit towards the very, very end of the Wii U's lifespan, like 2015, early 2016 maybe. And I got like through half of it. It never really gripped me. Like, it definitely was like, oh, this is easy. I don't know if I'm going to try 100% this, but it's S-tier aesthetics. Do you remember how the gamepad was implemented? I don't. Was it more than just a menu?
It is not.
Yeah. That's unfortunate.
That's where I was like, oh, Nintendo Land, because it really utilized that very, very well, like from the bones of how those mini games worked. No, but it was just big controller. That was nice though, pre-Switch, being able to sit in the living room and toggle the TV to a different channel. If Daphne wanted to watch something and I wanted to still be playing Yoshi, I could just play Yoshi.
I know I've talked about it with Wind Waker, but like, even when it is just a big map or a big menu, being able to just swap out your tools without having to pause a game and just like flick to what you want is like convenient. So fucking cool. I love the Wii U gamepad, man. I really do. And if the Switch 2 ends up being what we thought the NX would be, where it's a hybrid console where you have a portable tablet for on-the-go gaming and then a dock that enhances whatever game, like, is there a world where I could actually use my Switch 2 as a fucking Wii U gamepad for first party titles. Like that is exciting to think about. I doubt it, but it would be cool.
Like a reverse Wii U. That's funny. I really like Yoshi's Woolly World. It was nice. I am sad that Yoshi just gets like the leftovers of Kirby games, because we had Kirby's Epic Yarn. We had a yarn game, and then Kirby discarded it and started doing, unique, interesting things, and Yoshi got relegated to the yarn crap. Where is Yoshi's identity? What does Yoshi do well? When can we get a Yoshi in the Forgotten Land? Can you imagine a good Yoshi game? Because it has been 30 years. My God.
Give me Return to Yoshi's Island, where they lovingly recreate all of those Yoshi's Island environments. Beautiful 2D, 3D, like Octopath Traveler type stuff, where you're moving in a world that has depth, and that kind of enhances the platform, but it feels like the storybook world of Yoshi's Island. No crayons, no more craft supplies. Just give me a real Yoshi game.
No, I mean, I'd say crayons because the original game had a crayon aesthetic. Everything was sketchy and wiggly.
Yeah, like a scratch
So
board.
that was the callback I was going for. But yes, I agree. I do like Woolly World a lot more than Crafted World. I, similar to EJ, only got about halfway through it and was just, it didn't stick with me, but I recognize its charm and its appeal, and the soundtrack was really good.
What is your Wii U honorable mention? Something that you played, hopefully on the Wii U. I know there were a lot of ports that maybe you played on Switch for the first time, but
something I played on the Wii U and then also on the Switch was Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker.
Yeah!
Just a charming little game. Started as, I don't know if it started or if it was like a subtle sort of preview, but it started, to my knowledge, as little levels in Super Mario 3D World.
Yes.
Where you would stop the multiplayer action and just do these little one-off puzzle levels. And those were great. Those were awesome. It was just a great little distraction, little change of pace. And they made a whole game out of it. And it was a budget title, so you only spent like $40 on it. And it's pretty breezy, but you get through the game and then you play the real game because that's what Nintendo does. And in the Switch release, they actually added multiplayer. So this was a game that I tried to get Lindsay into, and we tried a couple times and didn't really play it. But I still had a great time playing it by myself, and it's a nice time. You cannot jump as Toad, and that leads to puzzles. And I like puzzle platformers where you're not jumping, where you're using gravity and the environment around you to push blocks around and traverse in unique ways, and the diorama aesthetic is perfect for that kind of gameplay. So yeah, Captain Toad's a gem.
I'm glad you didn't say Hyrule Warriors, because that is the only game that I could possibly speak on that isn't either on the top 100 already, or we haven't talked about as being canon in the Switch lineup at this point. So, dude, Captain Toad fucks. I've bought that game twice now. Never beat it.
You should beat it. It's very quick.
Yeah, I should revisit it. It's a cute game. Those are always a fun little break, like you said, in 3D World. Chasing, I think he gave you a star, not a stamp. But yeah, they really ported. So what haven't they ported? Xenoblade Chronicles X,
Zeldas,
which were already ports. So it's like you don't really count those, right?
Yeah, and every other game got sequels that were improvements or just sequels. Like Yoshi didn't get a port because it got a sequel. Kirby won't get a port because it got a sequel. Smash Bros got a sequel. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the bad WarioWare game.
Game and Wario.
Yeah. Everything else pretty much came to the Switch, and rightfully so. My honorable mention, like I said, is Hyrule Warriors. I know I've talked about this on this podcast. I had to have.
Yeah.
As someone who is not a huge Zelda guy, didn't know half the characters in this franchise because I played part of Ocarina and I had played part of Majora's Mask and experience with early 2D Zeldas, whatever, but didn't know Twilight Princess, didn't know Skyward Sword, which like half these fucking characters are from in this game, it seems like. Everybody always says that Warriors games are like mindless hack and slash games. And to an extent, they are. But to me, something like Bayonetta 2, which I tried to play, maybe I tried to play the first one, I can't remember. That was a boring hack and slash game. Hyrule Warriors, the thing that got me stuck in that fucking loop was that it was objective based. You get dropped onto a map and you run around fast as fuck, and you're just trying to like guard all of your bases, or you're trying to like funnel enemies to a certain area, or you're trying to unlock a boss area. Like, it's all objective based. You can just ignore hordes of enemies, dude, when you get into like, I have 2 bases that I have to prevent from fucking being taken over, and they're on 2 sides of the map, and you are just like running back and forth, or you have 3 bases and you have to prioritize like which one can I afford to lose. It makes the combat ancillary, which is funny because that's the whole point of the fucking game. It's fast and frenetic, and it's extremely diverse. All of the characters feel so unique. I didn't play DLC, and I never played the port, so like I don't know how this progressed across 2 ports and how many DLC characters, but it was a love letter to Zelda fans. And even as someone who was not a huge Zelda fan, but I have this shorthand with the franchise being around it as much as I have in the last 2 decades. I mean, it had those story moments where you Leo memed at the TV, or it had these musical cues that would kick up and you would get a little misty because, and to this day, I still think Hyrule Warriors is the best Zelda has ever looked. And I know that might be a hot take now that we have the Switch games, very stylized and nice aesthetically. I still think this is like the most polished Zelda has ever looked, and getting some of the cutscenes we got, and it's got a totally unique story, and you're like time traveling and going to these different eras. And so again, it's just a love letter to Zelda. And I think, Chris, you probably got more out of it than me in that regard, just being a much bigger Zelda fan. Although you only recently started doing all the 3D Zeldas, so maybe not.
Yeah, I actually played the game before I took my Zelda journey, my steps, because I had grown up on handheld Zelda only. So I'm talking Link's Awakening, I'm talking the Oracle's games, had not really touched a console Zelda. I did Hyrule Warriors in 2015 with my buddy Nate.
Shout out, buddy Nate.
We smashed that thing out in like 2-3 days of just like nonstop playing, and got to like Ganondorf's story. And then I think that's where we sort of fell off and never came back. But it was until 2016 that I played A Link to the Past all the way through for the first time. I played Ocarina of Time for the first time. And then from there got into Wind Waker, and just in time for Breath of the Wild and Tears, and going back to Skyward Sword before Tears of the Kingdom. So I think maybe I'd like it more now because of all that. But yeah, Hyrule Warriors fucking rocks. That game is a blast. Musou games are fun to play. Like, the people who are like, oh, hack and slash. Like, yes, and it's really fun to mow down like hundreds of moblins or whatever that are right in front of you with all of these awesome, bombastic, over-the-top abilities. Like, it's a power fantasy. It should be like that. And then they'll throw a boss at you and you're like, oh, fuck, I got to strategize a little bit. Oh, shit, we got to go hold that. They're taking a command post. We got to go hold that objective point right there. Like, that is fun. But at the end of the day, it is fun to just be mowing down hordes of these Zelda enemies with, like, Sheik's harp or whatever.
Right. And there are a lot of trash mobs in these games. But, like, there were moments where I felt like, oh crap, I'm going to be overwhelmed here. Like, you're not just running around blindly smashing A. Like, you have to know your combos. You have to be aware of, sort of the, if you're using magic, or if you're managing your special moves. And it's really easy to be overrun in those games. And so I always felt engaged. I never felt like I was just going through the motions and spamming A and like getting to the end of the level because I'm obligated to play this game for some reason as the 14th person to buy a Wii U. I was really engaged with it, and I beat that game. And I always look for a copy of the Legendary Edition or whatever on the Switch, and I can't find it anywhere. And it sells for like $80 online used, which I don't want to spend. It's kind of kooky. So that was like one of the early. It was like, I still remember to this day, and I maybe I've told this story, but it was Black Friday, and I think it was 2013. It was 2013 because I wasn't that far off from Mario Kart, which was 2014, correct? Sarah and I are out at Black Friday, and I see the Wii U display stand at Best Buy at like 2 a.m. And they are showing off like the demo reel. And I'm like, I need one of those. And if all I ever play is Super Smash Bros. And Mario Kart and Zelda fucking Wind Waker, it will have paid for itself. Unfortunately, that's kind of all we really got out of it in the end. But Sarah bought it for me for Christmas, and I was over the moon. I have the Zelda Wind Waker special edition. So I got that box tucked away in the closet up there. Beautiful little unit with the gamepad with the script on it in gold. And I felt obligated, as someone who was just like getting back into games again in a big way and being like compulsive in my need to collect things. You know, I was already on the retro game thing and collecting heavy for a few years. But also just like out of principle of like the Wii is largely the reason I quit playing video games. As much as we loved the Wii that first year with Wii Sports and whatever, like I can't even remember what else we played. The Wii's the reason I quit being a gamer through high school. And that the only time Andrew and I ever played games is when we were playing Smash Bros. Melee or Guitar Hero on way outdated consoles, right? I just felt this obligation to the Wii U being like a real console to like want to buy everything that came out for it. And that led to me buying and playing a lot of games I didn't like, but I got to find gems like Hyrule Warriors, which I probably wouldn't have bought if not for that compulsion. And I'm glad I did, you know?
What I'm hearing is we're going to boot up your Wii U, slap some Hyrule Warriors in, and just fucking go to town when I'm
sitting right under the TV. Sitting right under the TV, ready to plug in at a moment's notice.
Ooh, wait.
EJ, just to throw a correction at you, Hyrule Warriors was 2014, the same year as Mario Kart and as Smash Bros.
Yeah, I know. That's what I say. So it's 2013 because I got my Wii U like it felt like maybe 6 months before Mario Kart came out. So that would have been the end. That would have been Black Friday 2013, not 2012 when it was initially announced.
Hyrule Warriors was announced in December of 2013.
Yeah, I was just trying to pinpoint the timeline of when I discovered the Wii U's existence. Because again, nobody knew this even was a thing. I didn't know it was a thing until I saw it in Best Buy on Black Friday in 2013.
I got one.
I didn't even know.
March 2013. It was actually an engagement gift from my ex-wife. That all my homies in college kid, I was like, well, I got you an engagement ring, so maybe you could get something for me. And she's like, that's not how that works. And then all my homies were like, well, actually, my mom got my dad an Atari for an engagement gift when they got engaged in the early 1980s. Like, oh yeah, my mom did. So I came back from a week abroad in China and go in the living room, and there's a Wii U ready to be unboxed. I'm like, son of a bitch.
Ay. Young love.
Apocryphal.
The deep console Crusade lore.
Had to do it, sorry.
That's good. I love that.
Allegedly. Well, that's funny. Well, let's never talk about the Wii U again. And let's do a tier list. Let me share my screen with y'all.
We're back!
You peaked, but I'm assuming...
back, boys!
Okay, you're still peaking. You're peaking like Mallow, man. I can't hear a goddamn thing. You are screaming.
I'm just screaming. You'll hear it on playback next week.
Excellent. I can't wait. I'm going to share my screen. We are talking controllers.
Can I say, or ask rather, there are going to be controllers that won't be on this list that I feel strongly enough to be like, can we throw audibles in and like add them to the tier list as we go if we think of things? Is that simple enough to do?
I mean, you have to find and send me thumbnail pictures really quickly if you want to do that.
Okay.
Which is doable, but I am not. My shitty internet will not be able to handle all the things that I'm asking it to do at the same time if I do that.
Chris can barely run Chrome and Discord at the same time.
I really can't. Like, it's a miracle CS Suite runs as well as it does on my computer. But then again, I'm not running anything else at the same time when I'm like making programs in InDesign or whatever. Anyway, okay, so we have 5 tiers today. We have 6. I can't count. Ultra goated double S, because there are some controllers that are so unimpeachably fucking good that there had to be a special tier for them. S tier, which is for our very, very good controllers that we would consider to have almost no flaws. A tier, solid with some drawbacks. B tier, a perfectly cromulent controller. C tier, a controller with more drawbacks than benefits. And from C, we go straight to F. There is no D tier in this. It's you've either got more drawbacks than not, or you are just not a good controller. EJ has already sent me some thumbnails. Okay, what do we got?
I'm afraid Chris's internet can't handle this to the point that like he won't realize someone has started talking. He just won't hear any audio from us. I think it's already happening.
I can hear you. God damn it, I can hear you.
All right, kick us off. Let's fucking do this thing. We have a lot of goddamn controllers to go through.
Well, okay, I know you're looking at the screen, and we are not going to do all these controllers. We are going to end on the Steam controller. So we're only doing the first Heroes and Change. All this other fucking shit down here, none of y'all have touched these. I know that none of y'all have touched these.
A lot of those I have, though. Some of the early stuff, like the Intellivision.
Yeah, I own an Intellivision. We don't need to talk about the Intellivision. Like, it's fine.
Can we start the bidding and just say that with exceptions, which I'm sure EJ will get into, every PlayStation controller is a B?
No.
DualSense, I think, falls below that, but until that point, the
okay.
DualShock, DualShock controllers, minimum B. Chris's computer cannot handle this. He is beach balling of death here. He is frozen on our screen. Are we gonna have to run the show
I can
here?
hear you.
I'm seeing him slideshowing.
I'm recording.
Yeah, this is not ideal.
Hi. I can hear everything you're saying. Y'all hear me?
We can hear you now.
I can hear you now.
You can hear me now? Great.
Do you see me now?
I'm just going to minimize Discord. I don't need it. Do not get ahead of me, gentlemen. We are going to proceed in order as listed on the screen that you see before you right now. We'll get into all the fucking PlayStation controllers later. We can bitch about the DualSense again because it's fun to do. But let's start with the OGest of OGs in the fucking Atari joystick. How do we feel about this, fellas?
C. EJ, do you agree with me with C?
I initially thought C, but that's me looking at it from a modern lens. As far as what it does and what it needs to do, and it was asking of us as people interfacing with it, it's probably a B. It's like it did what it needed to do. It's simple. It's iconic. The Atari fucking joystick's iconic. I think it's probably a B, but like I wouldn't fight a C. You know,
It's, correct me if I'm wrong, it's one button and a joystick, correct?
all you needed, baby.
That's all you need.
Is it? A second button would be nice. I feel like doubling the buttons would make it a B.
What Atari game needs more than one button?
Every game that they tried to make for the Atari that wasn't made for the Atari, like Pac-Man or Donkey Kong. Like,
Pac-Man doesn't need any buttons. Donkey Kong needs only one button. Jump.
I'm just saying there are games that probably could have been more playable on the Atari had there been more than one button.
I think it's responsive. It feels good to move the joystick. There's a satisfying amount of resistance so that you know you are moving it in the direction you need to move it. I would agree with EJ.
Joysticks are bad.
It is perfectly cromulent. I would go B tier.
I could be on the fence because you're right. Joysticks are bad, and if you ever try to use an old Atari joystick, which I don't think either of you are playing Atari in 2023, but they feel really like it's similar to an N64 controller where the fucking bearing wears down and turns to dust.
You need to use both hands to turn left because you have to like hold the thing steady while you're cranking it to one direction. It's no good. It's not F. It works. It worked-ish, but come on, it's a C.
EJ, verdict.
I'm okay putting in C and seeing where some of these other controllers that I have like active distaste for, see where they land.
Okay, I guess we're going
She's
C.
fine. She's fine.
Okay, C tier for the Atari joystick that does not want to
Chris,
drag.
your fucking computer is not like
You know what?
this
Can we
at all.
can we just not? All right. Like, I know it. And the more we talk about it, the more I'm going to be pissed off about things I don't have fucking control over. So let's just keep going. We are rolling into the Nintendo controllers, and we are starting with the OG NES controller, aka the Palm Scraper, the Impact Driller, the hard-sided disaster that was the original NES controller. I'm going to open the bidding and say this fucker belongs right the fucking F tier.
That's fucking insane.
I say B.
It's B.
It is painful to hold. The D-pad does not feel great. It's not clicky. It gets mushy really fast. And it fucking cuts into my hands. It's designed to hurt me.
Your hands shouldn't be touching the edges at any point, the way that controller is designed.
So when I hold it, like pinching it between my finger and my thumbs, that's insane. No, of course your palms touch it. On the bottom side of the controller, you're honestly going to tell me with your fucking Sasquatch hands, just like me, that you are not pressing your palms into the side of that fucking controller when you're holding it. That's crazy.
Chris, I think a little bit of that is self-inflicted. I do also suffer from the same affliction where I'm getting the corners dug in, but that is grip lock, my friend. And I do think it is a not ergonomic controller. I do not like the side-by-side B and A buttons. I think the D-pad is good. The start and select buttons are good. They're serviceable. It is a perfectly fine controller for the system that it was built for, which is why I say it goes in B, and that the vastly superior Dogbone controller, which introduces the staggered B and A, is an A tier because it is comfortable and it is a huge improvement.
Nick, we're on the same wavelength right now. So using the fucking NES controller the way I use it,
That is, your fingers are going to
side
get tired
just
so
rests
fucking fast.
right here. That's how I've always used these controllers.
Yeah, you play 8 worlds of Mario Brothers like that and tell me your hands are fucking full of puncture wounds. This is crazy. There's no fucking way this is a B tier controller. It is an abortion of a controller. It is awful.
I love this controller. The buttons on this are still clicky. This is a 40 fucking year old controller right here. The buttons are extremely clicky.
Buttons clicky, check. Hands full of holes, check.
Not at all. The corners aren't even touching.
This just tells me you did not play a lot of NES growing up.
That's all I played. That's all I played until I got a PlayStation 1 was an NES for like fucking 4 years of my life. I love this controller, but I recognize that it's not the best. Nick said it right. This revolutionized controllers, and then the Dogbone iterated on it in a beautiful way.
I will settle for C in that it clearly has drawbacks. The D-pad is not good. The buttons are very fucking clicky. I love the buttons on the NES, and the fact that they're concave, so your finger just like rests in it, like it's so satisfying. But the D-pad is terrible. It does not feel good. It is not clicky. It's not responsive, and it's angular. It's square.
The D-pad is better than the Wii, better than the GameCube, better than the Wii U. This is one of Nintendo's best D-pads, and it was their first. I will not hear that.
That doesn't make it good. It means it's better than the bad ones.
What about it? The D-pad is bad. This is the iconic Nintendo D-pad.
It's mushy.
The D-pad's good. The B and A placement are hard to reckon with.
Agreed.
Considering, I think, Chris, you and I think what we do is because we played a lot of Super Nintendo and we got this habit of running and jumping, holding B and pressing A by rocking the thumb. And in order to do that with the NES, unless you have gargantuan, like baseball mitt hands, is you have to hold the thing sideways. You got to put your hand on it like this, and then you're cramming your finger up against some corners. So yeah, I mean, I do agree the ergonomics are terrible, and they get improved, but I still think that this is like a perfectly fine controller, and I think perfectly fine is the category for B.
I just don't fucking agree with that at all. I don't agree with that at all. I grew up on an NES controller.
I could consider moving it to C, but I want to see where the rest of these things shake out. Like, could we put a pin in it and like start throwing some other stuff on there and sort of seeing where the dice lay?
Let's remember that at the end of this, everybody is going to get their opportunity to make one unilateral move on one thing. And if you want to die on the fucking NES asshole controller hill, you can fucking die there and be buried there. And I'll come visit your grave and weep for you on that hill. I'm putting it in C and we're moving on.
It's a B. You're outvoted. It's a B.
I voted F. We average a C. It's math, EJ.
God.
We know from our chat earlier that's not your strongest suit.
That's a median B, okay?
Dogbone. Fucking fantastic controller.
A.
Quick A from me too.
I would also take into account the design aesthetic of the controller is worse than the NES controller. It loses out on the panache that the original had with the two-tone scheme with the dark gray and the light gray in favor of just purely light gray and then red buttons. I think it looks worse in a lot of ways than the NES original controller does. And I never really got a chance to play with this when they were ever new, so it was always like secondhand kind of controllers, but they always kind of felt creaky. I feel like it didn't have as high of quality. It didn't seem as industrial, as strong of a controller, but that could just be my own experiences with them.
I love the look of this controller. It is so fucking clean. I love the way the red pops off of this. There's something about the NES, the original NES controller, that it's so bad it's good. Like, that's a design that no one is ever going to try to replicate because it would never work again. But for whatever reason, it works well for this specific moment in time. And then, of course, Nintendo's made NES style variations on like every handheld ever, and they sell like fucking hotcakes. So A tier for the Dogbone. That's what we're feeling.
The NES controller is iconic. It is beautiful in its own right. Again, revolutionized what the NES revolutionized gaming and game systems. This revolutionized what controller and standardized what controllers should be and should do, and the simplicity of how this interacts with what you're seeing on screen. This should be a B. This is an iconic fucking controller. I love this thing. I will not waver from that.
Are you going to play, if you're going to play stuff on NSO, are you going to play it with a wireless NES controller?
I don't own a wireless NES controller, so I can't answer that.
fake fan. You got to buy the Switch Online one, baby. Come on.
Yeah, I don't own any of those. Maybe I should,
Okay.
but
Well, anyway, I know you're not going to play it with that. Like maybe you buy it and it's a nice like shelf piece to have that really nice, crispy new Bluetooth NES thing. But no one is going to use this controller to play NES games when they can use something that's more comfortable.
well, why would anyone use a Super Nintendo controller to play a Super Nintendo game when you can use a vastly superior modern controller? It's small and for long sessions uncomfortable. There are just better controllers to play games with in 2023.
But the NES controller isn't. It's smaller than a Super Nintendo controller.
I'm not saying it's a fucking S tier. And if you're gonna put the goddamn NES controller in C tier, the SES controller is like barely above that.
Barely. That's
All right, let's move on.
That's a
I see a
strong
lot more
statement.
NES here.
all right. So this is the God. I can't remember the subtitle for this one. The Boomerang.
What is this
controller.
nightmare? I've never seen
It's,
this.
you've never seen this? I think I own one of these. We'll find out
It's the Advantage.
later this month. Yeah, it's got a joystick on the left side and then two face buttons. And
I
I
thought the
think turbo.
Advantage was the thing to the right of that.
The Advantage is the thing to the right of it. This one has a joystick on the left though. Like in lieu of a D-pad, it is an NES controller with a left joystick instead of a D-pad.
What's it called? I gotta see it.
I think it's
Better.
called the Boomerang. The Boomerang.
It's the Max,
controller.
dude. It's the freaking Max controller. I thought you guys were talking about the Advantage,
That's it.
which
The Max
fucks with
controller.
turbo functions and everything.
The Advantage is cool. I think the Max has turbo also.
Yes, it does. This thing is weird. I don't know if I fuck with it.
No, it's F for me. I mean,
It's got the handles, but the handles are the same thickness as everything else on there, so you just have like a weird boomerang.
and I have handled a couple of these, and the joysticks are so slidey. They are not. They do
Have
not
they ever
feel
worked?
good. Probably not.
I just sold. Well, actually, no, I didn't sell it. It's actually sitting boxed up in my garage. I have listed on my eBay an NES bundle that has one of these, has Advantage. Everything works flawlessly. It was like a beautiful. The NES was trashed to shit, but all the accessories were like mint condition from this guy.
Easy F on that. That's fine.
Yeah, F. And the Advantage is like a B. The Advantage fucking rocks. It just
No, it's awesome. But if we're gonna penalize like Atari for a joystick, presumably, I feel like we ought to have like some consistency with regards to like joystick bad.
I feel like it depends. The context is important because the Advantage is like the same. It's huge. It's massive. It's something that like sits on your lap, I guess. How big is an Advantage? It looks like it's about like it looks like it's like 4 feet wide.
It's lap sized. It's lap sized. ZJ running to go grab an Advantage right now. Okay, there you go.
I've got visual representations of everything over here. I'm pulling controllers out of the fucking closet.
It can live in C and be above the Atari controller because it does seem like there's a lot going on that is incredibly unnecessary.
Here's the thing. You have to consider time and place. Arcades are the premier video game experience. A lot of the games are designed with a joystick in mind. Most NES games are arcade ports, and they feel better with a joystick than they do with a 4-way D-pad.
Yeah.
This is a very competent joystick. The buttons are nice and responsive. The turbo functions are great. You can adjust the sensitivity of with those are dials on the top.
That's so weird.
Yeah. This, as far as what it does it pretty damn close to perfect. It was just a niche thing that, like, I didn't have this growing up. Like, I didn't use this, you know?
Yeah, what would you use it for even?
Like Contra, if you had it, I guess.
I mean, anything. I mean, take your pick of beat 'em up or shmup. I think most games would probably be better with this, realistically, if you weren't already so used to using the D-pad. Like, Mario wouldn't be better with it.
Yeah, not an action game. It would have to be like, well, I guess is a beat 'em up an action game, I guess, but I guess a beat 'em up would work well. There's no fighting games on the NES. I wouldn't want to play an RPG with this.
Whoa, tournament fighters, bro. Fucking begs a differ, bro. Shout out Turtles.
No. No.
So B.
Rescind that
tier?
shout out.
Are we putting this B?
Give it a
tier?
B.
Are we
Give it a
putting
B.
this C
Give it a
tier?
B. Give it a B.
It's sad that it's a B and the original NES isn't.
Well,
but
I was
we'll
gonna
get
say
there.
this is a for what it does. Like they need to be evaluated for what they're trying to do. This is trying to be like a proto fight pad for arcade style games, which the NES that's like 80% of the library. So it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. But let's leave that fucking bygone era behind and talk about the Super Nintendo controller. This thing is pure sex, introducing 2 buttons, the 2 different colors, 2 concave, 2 convex, shoulder buttons for the first time. It feels good. It clicks. Everything clicks. The D-pad, to me, is meaningfully better than the NES in its like resistance to the finger. I love this controller. I love everything this controller is trying to do, but I would love to hear about what the group thinks about this controller.
It is a very good controller. The D-pad is less clicky, less responsive, and more apt to going mushy. I'll just throw that out there. But the 4 offset buttons, the concave versus convex triggers, again, this is like a gold standard in controller design. We're still making controllers to chase the high of this thing. It's not the most comfortable thing for me to use now as an adult. I've bought a lot of these 8-bit do fucking, I don't want to say knockoffs, because they're great controllers. And I just find that I'm not comfortable using them, and it's better to use a Pro Controller and use the Pro Controller's D-pad most of the time. So, through that lens, it's like, it was exactly what the Super Nintendo needed. I would put it in S tier.
Yeah, I don't think you could make a better controller for the system. I think it is purely perfect for the SNES and for SNES games. No notes. It is either top of A or bottom of S. I don't know what it could do better. And personally, I'll throw it out there. I know a lot of people are like super horny about the Famicom version, the Super Famicom version with the 4 colors. I don't love it. I love the two purples. That's
classy.
That's my Super Nintendo.
The gray and the purple and the light purple goes it's so understated.
Subdued, but
yes, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely S tier. I think I do not know what it could do better for what it's doing, and I own 2, not 1 but 2, because I knew Tiffany would want to have one for multiplayer sessions. 2 of the NSO wireless Bluetooth Super Nintendo controllers, and they are fucking phenomenal. All my NSO stuff with Super Nintendo, I use that thing for. I don't think. And I think this is one of the questions we'll have to sort of ask ourselves. Oh, no, come back as we keep going through. Yeah, that's not fucking going there. Is what lands something in Ultra Goated Double S? And I think it's joysticks are going to be a requirement. That I don't know that a controller could transcend to Ultra Goated SS unless it's got joysticks, just because of the range of different games that make it available to play. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. For now, let's deal with a real gem, the 64 controller. Nick, I want you to speak first, because I know you have good things to say about this and we don't. And I want to get some good on the ledger before we yell at clouds.
Sure. It's a totally unique controller in its use of the C buttons as a sort of before a second analog stick was ever deemed to be feasible, using those for camera controls in games like Mario 64 and Banjo-Kazooie, I think, does that as well. But 6-button controllers are really cool. I wish more controllers like had the bravery to do that, and not just Sega controllers, with which they were never really properly like utilized except for fighting games. I think having 6 buttons on the right hand would be more useful these days than back then. I don't know. I mean, you guys are just going to shit all over it, so it's hard for me to even like speak fondly of it. I thought it was cool that it had a modular design built into it that you could. It was never utilized though. It's similar to the shortcomings that the Wii U had, where it had this cool gimmick with the second screen experience, but it was never utilized in a way that made it feel necessary. It just turned into a big Fisher-Price looking controller that you're holding at all times. And the N64 had similar fate, where you could, if you wanted to, design a game that utilized only the D-pad and the 6 face buttons and have 2 shoulders, and it would work just as well as any Super Nintendo game did, with extra buttons and a more robust handling experience. Like I think the handles are actually really ergonomic and it feels really good to hold. But those games never existed. So you are always holding it on the middle of the prong, the middle trident, and you have this offset experience. So if you can get past that, it is a perfectly comfortable controller and has a nice Z button that you didn't really get a good trigger button until maybe the GameCube. I mean, I don't think the PlayStation trigger buttons were ever that satisfying. I don't have any experience with the Saturn or like previous Sega consoles, so I don't know about that. But the Z button was always like a good size and it fit right in the finger. Yeah, I think it's a perfectly good controller for the system it's on, and I understand that it is very unique and strange. So it is easy to pick it out and say it's bad. But I wouldn't say that it's like F tier. It's not bad at what it does. It's just awkward and strange. So,
oh man,
but I'm totally in the minority there for amongst you guys. So whatever.
So I have visual aids here I want to talk about. I know I have big hands, but these are problems that have plagued me since I was in 7th grade. So I just want to talk about the ergonomics of this. But first, you bring up some good points. First of all, the D-pad on the back of the prong, or the D-pad, the Z button, spectacular. This is great. And since most games utilize the stick, the Z effectively became your left trigger, right? So from a design standpoint, that is now limiting developers, and that I think is bad. Holding the controller like this with the D-pad and the prongs, this feels amazing. This is like the Super Nintendo on steroids, right? This feels great. I can't complain about this, but like you said, no games ever used it. So again, you were either forgoing the Z button or you're forgoing the left button, and again, that is just that you're forcing developers into not utilizing the hardware that you've given them, and that's bad design. I'm indifferent about C buttons. This is pre-camera control. Obviously, Mario 64 and Zelda like pioneering that to some degree, but whatever. The joystick itself fucking sucks. This little dusty piece of shit that would break down after 6 months of use, just a nightmare. From an ergonomic standpoint, I don't know if I can show you particularly well. This is an excruciating controller for me to use. And you can kind of see how this digs into the back of my hand. If I want to have a normal grip, that left prong digs into the back of my fucking hand. It's excruciating. Or Chris doesn't have his headphones on, or you have to angle your wrist. I can't show you. You either, to avoid the prong hitting the back of your hand, you have to angle your wrist unnaturally. And then that puts fatigue here on the wrist, and that fucking hurts. So I'm constantly trying to adjust my grip based on which part of my hand and wrist is hurting more at that moment. And if you want to just be comfortable, have a good grip on the Z, left thumb firmly on the thing, I am torquing my fucking left hand into this prong. It is miserable and uncomfortable, and I have felt this way since I was 12 years old, and I don't understand why people like this controller.
You are fully torqued in the wrong way.
Right now, even just showing you, it hurts. I hate it to the point where it would leave not visible bruises, but like you would feel it for days after a play session where you're like, dude, I fucking bruised the top of my hand with the N64 controller. And I know I have big hands, but I don't have that big of hands.
I'm curious how that's happening for you, because I got pretty fucking big hands, so I went and busted out the NSO 64 I got Tiff for her birthday, and the right hand feels terrible because in order to actually hold this, I have to choke so far up on it that my right thumb is all the way past the B button, almost to the fucking start button, to be able to hold this. If I want my hand to be on the A button, I have like 2 fingers gripping the bottom of this with my ring finger desperately propping it up from the bottom side, and that doesn't feel good. Like, let alone if I have to, God help me, if I have to do anything on the shoulder button or the D-pad, having to switch hands completely. This thing looks so good, and the 2 things on the side, like, if they made games you could do like this with both of the side paddles, this would be like an A-tier controller. But like you said, EJ, they didn't know what they wanted this to be. They were stuck in between design ideas, and that is too much to overcome for this. It is not an F-tier controller by any stretch of the imagination, but I certainly think it belongs in C.
This might be the case for an actual D tier, where it's like, yeah, maybe it doesn't belong in the fucking F because, like, it is an icon. It's a beautiful looking controller. This is unique. It's iconic. I love the look of this. I've seen these tattoos recently in my Instagram algorithm of people getting video game controller tattoos, and the N64 ones consistently look the fucking coolest. The Trident is badass. But from an ergonomic standpoint, from a design standpoint, from a software development standpoint, again, these developers getting hardware that they now can't effectively use, and they have to choose one direction or the other. That's just poor design. I put 2 controllers in the chat. One of them is the HoriPad 64. This is contemporary to the N64. They caught on pretty quickly that games did not use the D-pad, so they stuck it in the middle, right, which would make the D-pad uncomfortable to use, but you never use the D-pad, so it doesn't matter. The problem with that is now you lose the ergonomics of the Z button, which is fucking great being on the back of the controller like that. That's awesome. And then here you have the FighterPad 64. This is a modern third-party controller for the N64 and for PC and yada, yada, yada. a much more standard layout, obviously, access to the D-pad, access to the joystick. The one thing that any of these things are missing, if the N64 just cut off the damn trident and did the staggered D-pad joystick thing, of course, this is with decades of context, and then just put a button on the back of this, now your middle finger can go Z button, right? And you still have access to both triggers. You're much more comfortable. You don't have the prong you're fighting, getting all caught up into this fucking goddamn thing, hitting your knuckles or hitting the back of your palm if you're a monkey like me. Obviously, in hindsight, there are a lot of things this controller could have done better. Something we haven't mentioned, the fucking pack on the back of this thing where you could put in memory cards.
Dude, so tight. It felt like magic back in the day.
Putting my Pokemon Red in and getting them into Pokemon Stadium, I was like, this is the future.
Short-lived feature, obviously, due in large part to like wireless tech. But this thing never worked the way you wanted it to. The Rumble Pack fucking sucked. The game pack with the Game Boy always wiggled loose, so you would lose a connection mid-fucking game. The memory cards, you were always corrupting data. This thing was a fun gimmick that never worked the way you fucking wanted it to. And I have to hold that against it.
I never had any issues with the Rumble Pack.
Oh, the Rumble Pack. Oh, God, that thing. Disgusting. But I understand that there's a legacy conversation of like what Nintendo does and what they've tried to innovate with. Do we give them credit because they kicked the door down for developers to iterate on their shit and make it better? Or do you hold against them the fact that they clearly hit a wall during R&D that a hurdle they could not clear? I mean, have we even talked about, I mentioned how shitty this joystick is. It's obviously the worst joystick in fucking gaming history. It's also the first to this degree.
Right.
Shredding your palms on Mario Party.
Yeah, and I would say that is more a failure of the designers than it was a failure of the controller. It was a perfect marriage of those two things. But yes, I do agree.
Dustin.
The analog stick is the worst analog stick of all time, but it's also like the first widely utilized one. So I mean, I also can't fault it for that. It's great that they started out the gate with the octagonal gate on that thing that became so like pivotal to the GameCube experience, and then utilized further for the Wii and then the Wii U, not the Wii U Pro controller, but the Wii like classic controller. And then they just never decided to do that again, which is unfortunate. But the octagonal gate was great. And the actual, when you had a fresh, like new N64 controller, the level of precision was fantastic. And you could actually utilize that in Mario 64. You could walk, you could tiptoe, you could crawl. I mean, it was revolutionary. It really defined what 3D games were going to be from that point forward.
Yeah, and that's part of the conversation. And maybe I am in the minority, of people who I didn't like this when it was modern. I have not aged into liking this. I loathe having to use this. I don't know how many third-party options, including adapters to use GameCube controllers on my N64 with my cartridges.
Right. And it never feels good because you need the 6 buttons on the face.
And again, and even those third-party ones like that I put in the chat, again, the Z button needs to be on the back of the thing. Trying to use a trigger for a Z button for games that don't intend you to be holding the controller like that, it feels terrible. And so that's less a testament to like the N64 controller being good, and again, just a design failure and sort of having to pigeonhole how these games were made. And now we're trying to solve problems that shouldn't be problems in the first place. So
right, it's just a typical Nintendo thing where they only think it is both a good thing and a bad thing. It is why they are successful and also why we curse them, in that they make this hardware and then they make the hardware designed around like a game or two, and they do not have any consideration as to how other games are supposed to fit on this thing. Like
That's
they didn't
Nintendo,
think,
baby.
how are we going to court third parties with the N64? Like they just totally took it for granted that people would make games for this. Of course they would. We are. So it is totally tunnel visioned. And yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, it belongs in C. It is not a failure. It is just, it has failures, obviously.
Yeah, it's just awkward. It just has weird. A little bit more bad than good, and just is stuck in emblematic in many ways of the 64 as a whole, of a lot of really good ideas that are massive growing pains in hindsight that aren't necessarily fun to experience in their original forms at this moment in time.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not going to fight Chris on this at the moment, but the idea that the NES controller is an abhorrent piece of trash, but the N64 and all of its horrible ergonomics is slightly worse than good
Feels better to
It
hold
absolutely
for most
doesn't.
people. For most people, myself included, and I got big fucking hands. I got no problem with how that feels to hold. Except for the BA thing notwithstanding, that I have to like choke down on the controller a little bit. But the middle prong feels so good to hold that I don't need the right hand to support that much weight of the controller because I'm holding it in the center. Anyway, Nintendo GameCube, beautiful fucking controller. Who wants to start us out here?
The GameCube controller feels really nice to hold. It is great for playing Super Smash Bros. Melee. It is great for playing Super Smash Bros. In general, so much so that the fan outcry has made it so that it is the de facto controller going forward for that entire franchise, and they will have to continually support that controller. They already bowed to their whims with the Wii U because they had to, because the Wii U was a stunning failure and they needed any win they could possibly achieve, and then they pushed that forward on the Switch when they didn't have to, but they already had the technology, so they may as well. It is not a great general use controller, though. It is awkward. The A, B, X, Y placement being totally reversed from what Nintendo had done previously and what their contemporaries were doing at the time made it very strange, leading to such horrendous ports as the Mega Man collection on that system, in which B was jump and A was shoot. Can you imagine? Can you just imagine holding a game controller and pressing B to jump? It is beyond the pale. But it's a great controller. It's just not great for all games. So, I mean, I'd say A. Like, it is a great controller.
You know, this has become sort of in vogue, you know, for people to talk about that this is the best controller of all time. And you make good points about like it's not great for every game, and that is frustrating. But you look at Nintendo's controllers historically, and until the Switch, or maybe the Wii U Pro controller, like none of their controllers have ever worked for third-party games because they're a fucking idiot company. It's hard to say because on one hand, as we've hashed out on this podcast, the right stick, again, 3D camera control was not exactly standardized by this time. So the idea that you needed an extra stick to control that to the degree that we do now, like, I just don't think that's part of the conversation. If it was part of the conversation, I love the yellow nub, especially for more fine camera controls, you know, the 8-way direction. And if I had a modern game to control with that little nub, I would be fucking pumped about it. Z button sucks. Triggers are amazing. Best triggers on any controller ever. The analog controllers with the half press. So much about this controller is just perfect. Minor flaws. This, to me, is an S-tier controller, not an Ultra.
So EJ's opening with S. Nick, you said A.
Yeah, and I stick with that. I mean, I appreciate that you like the C-Stick. It still feels and looks like a vestigial appendage that somehow made it through the design process. Same with the D-pad, like visually distinct, obviously. Like the profile, the silhouette of this controller is unimpeachable. It is comfortable and it looks great, but physically actually utilizing those features, it seems like they were total afterthoughts. Like the face buttons are great, the analog stick is great, the triggers are great, and then you have a start button in the middle that is there, and the Z button that's there, and the C buttons, the C stick and the D-pad that are there. But those are total afterthoughts. And I think that kind of that holds it back for me.
The small D-pad, you're right. That is the one drawback of this controller. I love the nub. I love it.
Like, I think it's there for symmetry. I think it's literally there because they had to, because Sakurai begged and pleaded with them to have a C stick, that they just had to give it up and give them a D-pad as well because something had to go there. That's what it feels like.
I think that was intentional because they recognized the utility of having the C buttons, but also were like, we need 4 face buttons again, like on the Super Nintendo. So I don't necessarily think that this was just an add-on. The D-pad is pretty unusable. It's a bummer. That is a big drawback. But again, the fact that this has become the de facto controller for the biggest fighting franchise on the face of the fucking planet, you want to say it's a niche use case? 80 million copies. One of the greatest selling games. This is an S-tier controller. S-tier. People talk about the Wavebird being the best version of this controller. I disagree. The wired version is more comfortable. The fucking Wavebird is awesome for what it does, but the trade-off in ergonomics and the lack of rumble is a bummer.
If the Nintendo 64 controller is emblematic of the growing pains from a 2D to 3D environment, the GameCube controller is emblematic of Nintendo's stubborn fucking resistance in adapting to every major trend in the gaming industry for all time. It was one thing for the 64 to release a year after the PlayStation and not have 2 sticks. It's one thing for that. An entire console generation later, in a post-DualShock world, it is fucking inexcusable that this controller did not have 2 real fucking joysticks.
I think the N64 came out before the DualShock, but
Came out before the
could be wrong on
DualShock,
that.
but the OG PlayStation, when did the DualShock come out? Because I know the first one didn't have any joysticks.
It was the end of 97.
Yeah, a year after the N64 release. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll rescind that part. But an entire generation after,
in which they were beaten into the dirt.
into the fucking dirt, Square Enix jumped ship,
Lost Capcom. They lost every Japanese developer.
and then they come out with this GameCube controller that looks great, that feels very good to hold. It is extremely ergonomic. I like the placement of the face buttons. You can all reach them very easily, even if you have big fucking Sasquatch hands like me and EJ do. The triggers are amazing. I don't mind the Z button, but the C-Stick is fucking inexcusable to me. It is a complete afterthought that I would not be surprised at all, EJ, if Sakurai, with hat in hand, was like, I beg you, Miyamoto-san, give me a fucking second stick on this, or I cannot make what you want me to make on this console. And almost none of it's used as like an ancillary feature in almost every one
They
of
use
their
it as
games.
C buttons. They in Sunshine, they don't use it as a second camera. You like still click it like a button. It's really
Yes,
weird.
in Metroid Prime, you switch your fucking beam weapons with it, and you have to hold a shoulder button to move the camera around instead of using the joystick that's on the fucking controller to move the camera around and switching your beam weapons using the shoulder buttons. It is impossibly, it is bad. That is bad. That's A tier for me. Solidly A tier, but I cannot give this thing S tier for how inexcusable the design philosophy is.
What you're describing is an issue with the people who developed Metroid, not the controller. As someone who put in 100 hours into fucking 007 Nightfire using that little yellow nub as full camera control and loving it, again, preferring that yellow nub for my camera control than I would have a convex gripped stick.
Look how low the C-Stick is on the handle. You're going to tell me that it's more comfortable to fold your thumb all the way down from the 4 face buttons to that tiny little clit stick and move that around to move a camera than it would be in an Xbox Pro controller. The vast majority of the GameCube library did not use that thing to control the camera because it's awkward. It doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I think one thing led to the other. I think the design of the GameCube controller did inform how developers would utilize it. And yeah, you do get third-party games that were developed for multiple consoles, so they're going to utilize all the controllers
Because they don't have a choice.
in similar ways.
Yes, exactly.
Well, because they don't have a choice, but just for me personally, I do not like to use the C-Stick as a camera stick because I would like a larger pad for my thumb to rest on.
Yes.
And the resistance on the C-Stick is higher, or perceivably, it seems higher because the profile is lower. So you have to travel the sort of leverage that your thumb is putting on it. It is noticeable. It feels wrong to utilize it in that way. And I think
Yes.
I could be totally wrong. I don't know if this is the case, but it always felt like the analog nature of the C-Stick was minimal. It seemed like it had a very wide dead zone, and then suddenly it activates near the edges. So I don't know. It just was never preferable for me personally to utilize it as a control stick.
And it wasn't used. It was not widely used that way in design. There are exceptions, clearly.
Again, what you're describing, due in part to, as Nick eloquently put, 3D camera control not exactly being canonized in the way that you're remembering.
Except it was on the PlayStation 2, which was a contemporary of the GameCube. So like what Sony's looking into a fucking crystal ball and that we can have camera control on these PlayStation 2 games? Like,
So again, you're upset with the developer for not implementing camera controls, and that's a separate discussion.
no, I'm upset with Nintendo for making a bad second joystick that doesn't feel good to use, that is weirdly not the same size as the other joystick, and that has a different level of resistance to activate than the joystick you're using on the left hand. It's not... Nintendo was behind the fucking times. I get it. You like it. It was not used widely because it was not created in a way that was conducive to being used widely as a second stick.
Every third-party game that gives 3D camera controls utilizes it the way any other joystick utilizes it.
And it doesn't fucking feel good. And most of those third-party games were developed with other consoles also in mind.
First of all, the yellow stick is half-inch closer than on any other standard Xbox controller you've ever used. So that seems like a silly argument to make.
That's a big distance on a 4-inch controller.
Dude, the ergonomics of these controllers, they're like the same size with joysticks and buttons in almost identical positions. This is closer to what we know as a standard controller now than PlayStation's ever had. Whatever, we don't have to debate. You don't like the C-Stick, that's fine. Yeah, I agree that there are plenty of games that didn't utilize this, but there's a reason it's widely considered the best controller of all time. I think that's a little bit like a step too far. This isn't ultra goated. But what I'm hearing is a lot of issues with a developer who has always been behind the times, and I don't think it was a hardware limitation. Certainly not the way the Wii controller was and is, and we'll get to that. But
I think my major gripes with it are similar to maybe not the ergonomic sense, but a lot of the functionality of where the button placement and the usefulness of said buttons and sticks kind of mimic what the N64 was experiencing with having a very specific, like Nintendo likes this layout for the ABXY, and everyone else just has to fucking deal with it. That's their problem, not theirs. So, like going back and trying to play Melee with a Xbox controller, imagine like trying to do that. And how do you set up the face buttons? Like you set up A to A, and then what? X is B, and then Y is X.
We don't mess with all
so
that.
you're amalgamating, you're trying to mimic the layout a little bit, but it's not going to feel exactly one-to-one. And same with imagine being a developer and you have, a normal function on the select button. Where do you put that? You put that on Z. It's just weird stuff. So you get weird things. It's a game controller that you end up getting weird things put on it because it is non-standard. And I think it is a downside. I think the GameCube controller can be either top of A or bottom of S. I think it does kind of sit in that category where it is a fantastic controller, but there are definite weird flaws.
That's the window for it to me. I don't disagree with that at all. I would put it at S. I was like top A, bot S. Like that could be a flex point for sure, depending on what I wouldn't put it above the Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah, it has too many weird little decisions. Okay, this is total side tangent, but kind of related, just comparing the Super Nintendo and the GameCube controller. So there was a Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo that you could play Game Boy games on your TV with the Super Nintendo controller. And there was the Game Boy Player that you could use a GameCube controller to play Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games on your TV. I would much rather use the Super Nintendo controller for Game Boy. And I don't think there was ever really any third-party controllers that were specific for the Game Boy Player. I would have loved to have had those because the D-pad was atrocious. And the analog stick, you can like get by playing Game Boy Advance games, but the A and B being backwards, and I don't know if did they take that into account? Did they actually let you map that with the Game Boy Player? I don't remember.
I have it. I've barely used it.
I know I've shared this picture with you of the freaking
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. That's so funny.
This thing again sought after as fuck, specifically for the GameCube player.
Man, that thing is hot. Oh,
that's top of S.
The front-facing Z button, bro.
We need a triple S. We need a triple S. Okay.
Triple S goated hoary Game Boy Player controller.
That thing is fucking hot. Oh my god.
Do you want to know the price charting on that controller?
I don't. It'll make me sad.
Loose, the Indigo one, is price charting, only selling 4 times per year for over $200, complete for $300, and new for like $1,000 almost, 800 and some bucks. People are crazy about their controllers. Like, people are insane.
Hori still exists. They can just make that controller again. Why don't they?
That's probably a licensing agreement with Nintendo, so they probably can't do that specific
Call them
thing.
up. They're making Switch controllers.
That's true. You see, Hori used to like make the controllers people wanted to use, but in such limited quantities, and now Hori just makes bad controllers.
They're not top tier. They're not bottom tier. They're not Power A.
Oh, I'll never buy that fucking garbage again.
All right.
All right, moving on. Oh my god, we're entering the Wii, and we're gonna start with the Wiimote. I think that this image specifically is a motion plus Wiimote. We don't have both, so we can consider whichever one you want. But this is a really bad controller to me. for a lot of reasons. The motion in the original Wiimote didn't work. It was literally like wax on, wax off. It's either like you flick it and it's like, you moved and it executes a command, or it's just imprecise as hell. Pairing it with the nunchuck wasn't bad, but like the way the buttons were all stacked up, like you're holding it, you've got your finger on the trigger, the B button on the backside, which was great, an iteration on the Z button from the 64, which we all liked. And then you've got your hand squarely on the A button, and the D-pad you can kind of stretch to, and then you got your plus minus, but getting down to the 1 and 2 buttons, you really had to get your finger down on that fucking thing. And I don't know. I feel like this was a fairly disastrous controller, especially for a motion device. Like if that's what it needs to do best, it didn't do that until pretty late in the Wii's lifespan.
The original Wii controller is an easy F, and then they introduced the peripheral that you click into the bottom of the Wiimote for the Wii Motion Plus, which kind of worked better. And then they eventually started producing it where the Wii Motion Plus is housed in the main Wii controller unit, and they had to label them as separate controllers. Yeah, flipping this bitch on the side to play a standard game that didn't use all the WAGA controls fucking sucked. It was, just this little Klondike bar-ass thing where you're trying to, playing Mario Bros. Wii with that thing, flipped over on the side, was wretched. Try playing Smash Bros. Without a nunchuck. You tell me how much fun you're fucking having. Because you could do it.
That is a way to stunt on the hose. Well, just by beating them with the Wiimote.
If you went over to a friend's house who didn't have a GameCube,
somebody's playing Wiimote and a nunchuck.
4 people are playing with a Wiimote and a nunchuck, or 2 people get a nunchuck and 2 people don't.
Dude, you're lucky if you got 4 Wiimotes and nunchucks for the first 3 years of that console's life.
Everybody who bought this console, nobody had owned a game console prior to this. The entire market for this console were first-time console buyers, or people like my dad who hadn't bought a console since 1987. So no, you were always stuck with this abhorrent piece of trash controller. This is, to me, this should just be called the Wiimote tier. F is this was made for that tier. It is the worst controller Nintendo has ever made, and this is someone who thinks the N64 controller is an F. Don't even consider how the Wii, there's this horrible blip where everyone was trying to chase what the Wii was doing, and Nintendo was not making games for gamers. Even ignoring what the Wii did to Nintendo as a company, just looking at the controller itself, it didn't do what it was supposed to do, and games had to be designed around that fact. Not even that, that secret. That was it was a secret. We don't want people to know that this thing isn't actually able to do what we say it and sell it to do, so we have to obfuscate that through design. And suddenly you're just playing a bunch of crappy mobile games before we had mobile games. And again, I think it almost killed the company. Fuck this controller. Nick, you're thinking hard about this.
Well, because we're wrapping up both iterations into one. So the original pointer controller, which is that's what it was. It was an IR blaster, and you could point at the TV, and that worked as long as you weren't moving too fast and you weren't doing anything too crazy. And then they did the Wii Motion Plus, which did work, and it was nice actually having those capabilities for those games that were designed for it. I don't know. It's a modular controller, which obviously has a little bit of pushback because EJ, as you so eloquently put it, it's got a D-pad that no one can use, so it's bad. It's that doesn't make a keyboard bad just because you're not using all the buttons all the time. It's modular. I don't agree with you on that point. That is just a point that you made. So I don't think that the 1 and 2 buttons are bad for where they are, for what they do, because you're not using them in the games that are designed well. If a game designer puts actions on those things but expects you to be having your thumb on the A button of the D-pad, then that's on them, not on the controller, I'd say. Ergonomically, it fits well in the hand. It's not asking a lot of the controller to just sort of sit there. This is the design era of Nintendo where they were looking over at Apple and saying, hey, we should do that. And I think a lot of people liked that. I don't know if I necessarily did. I don't really love the Jewel A. I think I like the original DS more than I like the DS Lite. I am definitely in the minority there. I think, Chris, maybe you are with me. EJ's definitely against me there, but I think it has a visual identity that is matching with the Wii and the DS Lite. And there's a product line that was Nintendo's image. It was the gray icon. It was the Japanese men that were kindly coming up to your door, knocking on it, saying, we would like to play. And I think that is sort of wrapped up in the simple rectangle that you see when you look up a Wii remote controller. And I think that puts it above F. I mean, it's not a failure. It's not bad. It is striking. It is comfortable. It is functional for the schlock that they were making for it, for the shovelware that they were putting on the system. It did what it was supposed to do. Wii Sports with this thing was great. You could pick it up, you could hand it to someone. The hand would mostly naturally conform to where it was supposed to be, and it functioned for those games. So, I mean, I'd say that's at least a C.
I would open the bidding at C below the original NES controller.
I got a Wii as a sophomore in high school. I only played first-party Nintendo games they designed to be utilized with their hardware, and almost none of them, except for Wii Sports, actually wanted you to use the vertical orientation of the Wiimote with motion controls.
Because it didn't work back then. It was a pointer controller. They knew better.
That's an F. It didn't do what it needed to, what they asked of it to do. And trying to play Super Smash Bros. With it flipped horizontally, or trying to play new Mario Bros. Wii, or, you know, God forbid, Mario Kart, you know. And again, they expect you to buy another, like the nunchuck was, so you had to buy a nunchuck. If you had all these controllers, you didn't go buy a Wiimote with a nunchuck. You had to buy it separately. And then if you wanted to play like a real big boy game, like say you wanted to play an RPG or something, you're literally plugging in a shitty baby dog bone controller into the bottom of your Wiimote. Everything about it is a fucking failure. Games that you played on the Wii and had fun with, you had fun with in spite of that controller. And every alternative to just a standard vertical or horizontal Wiimote was better. The Silver Mario Edition controllers that you plugged into the bottom, the dog bone controller that you plugged into the bottom, the weird one with the little nubs that you plugged into the bottom, with a nunchuck, better. With a GameCube controller, better. The Wiimote is the worst controller you can use on that system. It's an F.
It's the lowest of all the Nintendo controllers, which I think is right and proper. I think some of the plugins for the Wii that we're going to talk about really briefly in a second are certainly going to get dropped right into F tier. But no, I mean, there were plenty of first-party Nintendo games, including Mario Kart, that I played with Wiimote and Nunchuck. That was like standard practice in my household in college, playing Mario Kart Wii, because it felt better. It felt better to hold it that way. It was more responsive to use the joystick on the Nunchuck.
Not the Wiimote, not standard in the Wiimote package. Not a third party, but a add-on peripheral.
I think that's a little disingenuous. Like, it was always pitched Wiimote and Nunchuck. Like, that is, yes, you could play it without, but that was, I think, the intended play experience.
Money grubbing bastards. That should be a knock against them.
That's capitalism, baby, and I don't disagree, but I can't in good conscience put it in F tier because it did do a fair amount of things well, and for no other reason that we are not separating OG Wiimote and Wii Motion Plus, because I would put Wii Motion Plus a little bit higher, and I would put base form Wiimote, probably would be okay putting that in F tier. But as it stands, bottom of C, I think is a fair compromise.
Not having a D tier is really fucking up this entire list.
We've never used it. All of the other tier lists, we've never used a D tier before. I can add a D tier. Do you want to put it in D tier?
Wii tier.
Yeah.
Wii tier.
Put it in Wii tier.
You son of a bitch.
It's awful. Okay.
It's got to come back to it.
By the way, I have a list randomizer ready to go that I'll stream for you guys when we decide who gets to the order in which we move. No more Chris going last to fix our mistakes. We're going to let it be up to the gods which order we actually make our final changes in.
Yeah, bro, that's fine. I'm cool with it. You always assume I'm going to respond so strongly. My responses are unpredictable. It would, like, when I'm going to go volcanic, there's no predicting that. Don't try to predict it.
I'm just saying,
He's Vesuvius over here.
Last time, yeah, I'm trying to get fucking Chris screaming at me while I'm laying down jerking one out. You know what I'm saying? Shout out. You know the guy, right?
No.
He got his face. Oh my God. You don't know the jerkin' man?
No.
The masturbating fucking Pompeii man.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Yep,
All right.
Yep.
Thanks for letting my joke fall flat, dude.
Oh, we got there at the end.
Came back at the end.
Sorry, not top of mind.
All right.
Okay, all right, we're moving on. There are two plug-inable Wii controllers that I want to talk about. One of them is the Baby Dog Bone. I owned one of these things. It's F tier. It feels awful. The joysticks are way too close together and they're not offset. They're on the bottom of the controller. And the cord going from the controller to the bottom of the Wiimote is set on the bottom. So I have to keep the cord from turning over, and
You've got to awkwardly balance the controller on your lap or something.
Yeah, it is absolutely
yeah.
terrible. Absolutely terrible. I would put that squarely at the bottom of anything we've rated today in F tier.
And the sticks are very much close together. That's a problem I had with the DualShock 4, is that the sticks were too close together, and I would always like bump my thumbs into something I wasn't supposed to. And that seems like that's a recipe for disaster right there.
Guys,
The show.
I have to point out, while yes, I hate the Wii, and I think the idea of plugging in controllers to another controller and able to utilize their functionality is fucking absurd. But this, you're not meant to use the sticks. This is for virtual console games.
Then why are they there? They're
Utility.
actively making it worse.
Yeah, that was a choice that was made.
This is meant to be a D-pad controller for virtual console games and for platformers and stuff like
With
that.
the worst D-pad iteration they ever landed on.
I don't know if it's the worst. It's,
What's worse?
I mean, the GameCube D-pad's worse than this.
That
This
is
is the
true.
same D-pad that they put on the Wii U and the Wii Pro controllers, which we really like.
I know, which I don't like. I don't like the D-pad.
I don't know. It could be worse. It's perfectly cromulent.
It could be worse. Glowing praise.
Well, then, if we don't want it in F, I'm putting it in Wii tier. It's not
Put
going
it in
in
Wii
C.
tier.
It's
Put it in
not
Wii
going
tier.
in C.
Put it above the Wii controller in Wii tier.
Done. The other Wii plug and play is sort of the Proto Pro controller that's a little bit wider profile with the two handles coming down the side. They're a little more angular though, 4 shoulder buttons, and then gives us our like plus minus home layout that we now see standard in I don't know, most every Pro controller out there. Also plugged into the the nunchuck. I don't know. Do we have feelings on this, or is this just going in Wii tier also?
Yeah, put it in Wii tier, but above the one with the cord coming out the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
The best move, if you were trying to play real games on the Wii, all 4 of them, was to buy one of the, I don't know.
GameCube controller.
Well, most games wouldn't support the GameCube controller, sadly. You had to buy like a Power A or whatever. Like they had the Mario series. You could buy Peach and Luigi and Mario, those ones. That was the most elegant, quote-unquote, solution to this problem. We haven't even gotten through Nintendo yet. Holy fucking shit, we got to start blasting through these.
Correct. Maybe this is just a Nintendo consoles tier list, and Atari also came to play. Maybe we need to do the other consoles a different day. But I put these first on purpose because I knew it was going to take the longest.
Well, thankfully, DualShocks are all the same, so we can blast through them.
That's the thing, is that the DualShock has not iterated enough to be like, we wouldn't have a conversation about them. Same with the Xbox controller. You'd be like, wow, the Duke was funny, but yeah, it would not lead to a lot of debate.
Okay, we'll see. The next up is the Wii U gamepad. I'm just going to say it. I think this is a fantastic controller. I think it feels really good to hold. I think having the screen in the screen was amazing. And if this had to stumble and scrape its knees and fall and break its nose for the Switch to run, I think that's great. I would put this in A, personally. I think it
Solid
does
A.
everything it needs to do very well.
I think it's a solid A. It has some obvious drawbacks, like the look and feel was always pretty cheap, pretty chintzy.
Yes.
Resolution was low.
Fisher Price
The
ass.
resistive touchscreen.
I like that more than a capacitive one would have been. Like, I don't want to see my finger. I don't like playing games where I'm using my finger. I want to use a stylus. So that I'm fine with. It's just that it was low res and that the transmitting distance was not that great.
It was
like,
so short.
if you had a drink between you and your Wii U, you're risking cutting out, you know?
No
Yeah.
aquariums.
So- Yeah, no aquariums, please. Yeah, the feel was great. Like the actual holding it, lovely. Love using it. Battery life could have been better.
Oh,
you know,
yeah. It's
small
pretty.
things.
Yeah. So is this above the NES dog bone or below the NES dog bone?
I'd say above.
And under GameCube, presumably? Because that's an S, like a bumping on S tier?
Yeah.
I know EJ probably agrees because he wanted GameCube up in S tier.
He's thinking though. He loved going back and forth between the TV and the gamepad.
No, I'm not thinking it's solid A. No, I'm thinking, I know that Chris put, even though I said it's an S tier and you guys both said it's top A, bottom S, it still went into A, so that I have to contemplate using my fucking one move to put it into S tier. Pretty underhanded, but the Wii U gamepad is an A.
If there are 2 votes for A and 1 vote for S,
You guys both said top A, bot S, and then I was the tiebreaker that said S.
Chris, to be fair, EJ and I both said NES belongs in B, and you said F. So suddenly that counts to put it to C. But in this case, it counts to put it in A.
The rules are changing.
Like, be consistent, if anything.
If you want the NES in B, I'm happy to move the NES up to B if it means
I think at this point, it belongs bottom of B. I mean, come on.
If it'll put the GameCube controller to bed, I will move the NES controller up to B tier.
I'd be fine with that. EJ?
I feel way more strongly about the GameCube controller than I do the fucking NES controller.
You can use your vote on that at the end of the thing, but I'm not going to touch it. I'm not. You know what? I'm going to make a rule because I'm running this thing.
Here we
Who
go.
fucking cares? You cannot use your one thing to Uno reverse somebody else's one thing. So if EJ's like, you do not have to worry about going in any order. If you move GameCube to S tier, it's staying in S tier. We cannot use our one thing to Uno reverse your one thing because that feels mean spirited. It feels mean spirited, and it feels like then you have to like play 4-dimensional chess instead of just going, I want to put my fingerprints on this.
That means if you go first, you could put the GameCube in B, and then EJ can't touch it then, right?
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I would never do that because that's even worse. All right, I'm moving the NES up to B. Under the advantage, though. Nobody objected. Okay, we're moving on.
Yo, can we talk about how the Wiimote you could put inside of a Guitar Hero controller?
Or a gun?
Yeah. Hey, I owned the Big Buck Hunter game on Wii that had the plastic shotgun peripheral that you put the Wiimote in the front and the nunchuck in the handle, and you could literally cock it to shoot. And we would play drinking games and get so fucking drunk in college playing Big Buck Hunter on the Wii in my living room.
Wii tier.
That sounds kind of lit, not gonna lie.
It was amazing, and it played really well. I gotta get this again. Okay. So the Wii U Pro controller, kind of like a slightly shittier 360 controller. It feels pretty good to hold, but it does not have the ergonomics of the Switch Pro controller. It's the curvature of it kind of feels a little funny, and the joysticks are like way off to the sides and symmetrical instead of being offset. I'd put this in like a B, but I didn't use it with any regularity, so maybe y'all feel more strongly it goes somewhere else.
I think B makes sense to me. Had a killer battery life. Thing I think would last for 40 plus hours of gameplay, which is ridiculous, but it was also lighter than anything I've ever owned. So it kind of felt bad. The sticks were fine. I never thought about the sticks. Like, looking at it, it looks awkward because the sticks are on top, but it never felt weird to play. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it at B. It's not, like, special. It's not revolutionary. It was nice that Nintendo made a controller that had all of the buttons. Like, thank God. It'd been so long.
It's been 84 years. EJ, you good with bottom of B tier?
It depends on where the Switch Pro is going to go, because I think the Wii U Pro controller is as good as the Switch Pro controller in different ways, but as good. So it kind of, like, I'm fine with B, but if the Switch goes 2 slots higher, that doesn't necessarily make sense to me. So it's kind of hard to. I mean, B's fine. The D-pad is the one that Nick doesn't like, but the buttons feel nice, and the battery life was fucking insane. So like, it was just a good controller.
It's also the last device that I owned that used a mini USB cord to charge.
Except our microphones that we're all using right now.
Yeah, it's not charging it.
I don't love
fair.
that either. I had to go to 3 different stores to get a micro USB when you sent me your Yeti in Baton Rouge because no one fucking carries that like standard anymore. And I had to buy like a little dongle of a bunch of different adapters that happen to include micro USB just to be able to run my mic. Anyway. Joy-Con, boy howdy, I feel like this goes in Wii tier for so many reasons. Like, they're cool. HD Rumble, yeah, they are way too fucking small. Playing a game just with one of those is impossible for a child, let alone a grown-ass man like we all are. And there's no goddamn motherfucking D-pad. Also, the fact that because they have to function as halves of a whole and also individuals means that, like, I will never play single Joy-Con with a right Joy-Con because the stick is further in and it feels worse to me. So you have like variable experiences based on which side of a Joy-Con you're even using. I do not like these like at all. personally.
Dude, this is so tough because if you look at them like that, looking at them like a Wiimote, they're travesties. If you look at these as what I think is essentially, without question, the greatest handheld controls ever made, using them as a console controller in the Pro Grip kind of sucks. Using them individually kind of sucks. So it's like, it's kind of hard to judge. As mobile controls, this is better than any handheld.
Let's go.
Let's
Just
go
sitting
with
back
one
with
hand.
just the one?
That's pretty nice. That's pretty dope.
I do like that, oh man, like in the early days, I would just sit back and recline and have my hands behind my head or have my arms like splayed to the side. And that's nice. That is nice. But it's just not only a handheld. If it was, unquestionably, this would be way higher. And maybe Wii tier is a little extreme, but if we take everything on some, maybe this just has to go in B. Like, it's such a mixed bag. I don't know how it can go any higher.
Not to mention the failure rate of the sticks.
Oh my God, Joy-Con drift. Oh, this shouldn't be over C.
This is tough. Unlike the Wiimote, which all games were developed to use in specific ways, and they were all bad. Most of the Switch library, 95% of the Switch library, and any game worth actually playing, they are designing their controls to be normal controls. And the Joy-Con are most effective when they are just being used in a handheld mode as a regular controller. To me, it being able to, either be a Wiimote or to be flipped on its side or to be used in a Pro Grip, those are all completely ancillary. Those are like little bonuses that work to varying degrees. Like, it's not relevant to what those do as a regular controller as standard inputs for most games in existence. So I kind of do look at these as just the controls for Nintendo's newest handheld.
Well, you can look at it that way, but it doesn't change the fact that, like, out of the box, if this is your only way to play these games at home using the dock, which is 50% of the experience of the Nintendo Switch, maybe not for everybody, but by design is 50% of the experience, it does not feel good. Even
That's
in the
perfectly
Pro
passable.
Group. Yeah, it is mid when it's being used as a home console controller. Even in the puppy head grip, it's just small. It does not feel good to hold compared to most other contemporary controllers. So it is really, really hard to parse this. I go from B to C because of the failure rate. And I think that is worth considering. Like, if we were going to do a tier list and the OG Xbox 360 came up and we didn't talk about the Red Ring of Death, that would be an abdication of responsibility, I think.
That was also like 18 months of its life cycle.
The failure rate of the sticks has been ongoing, and there's still a class action lawsuit against Nintendo.
Right.
And their response to that is to say, hey, we'll fix it for free. But that's not a solution. That is that's a Band-Aid. That's them replacing the thing that's broken.
OxyClean guy slapping the duct tape over the fucking tank of water that's leaking everywhere. That's what that is.
I know the Joy-Con drift is a problem. I literally have never experienced it in all these years.
That's crazy, dude. I've sent 2 for repair.
You need to buy more lottery tickets, bud, because that's crazy.
Apparently. I've never experienced it. I wish we had some solid numbers on like how many are actually being sent to Nintendo for repair. And like, even that's not flawless in determining like what's the actual failure rate of these. What is it, like 1%?
I think it's gotta be double digits percentages, like easily, because it's always the left stick. I think that's the most prevalent one. And I've had 5 sticks go bad, and Lindsay's had 1. I preemptively, because she plays hers handheld more than I do, I switched hers out with some Hall effect sensor sticks. So like it's super prevalent. And I will be on the record to say that I do enjoy playing the Joy-Cons like in the grip. I think that it's a good option if you don't have the Pro Controller. But the Pro Controller is better than it in every single way, because the sticks are too small. The travel on them doesn't feel right. You don't have that level of precision that you want from the sticks. The plus and minus placements are pretty bad. I like the split apart D-pad. I'm totally in the minority there. It's fine. The shoulder buttons never feel good. The bumpers, like the triggers are fine, but the bumpers are too small. They're too thin. It's weird. Yeah, I mean, it is a perfectly good controller for when it's handheld, but if you're using it the way it's intended, like it comes with the grip, it comes with a dock, it comes with the use case of playing it on the TV, And for that, I don't think it's anything but above a B. So everything
Yeah.
else kind of drags it down. It's got good things and bad things, great things even, but it's so hit or miss.
You want to talk about shifting goalposts? It's like, well, the Wii does exactly what you want. Well, if you buy the third-party controllers, which is not how it's meant to be used. But now we're holding it against the Switch for the
It did sell with the Wii Motion Plus eventually. It was just that's not how it came originally.
Or even the nunchuck. Did it come with a nunchuck?
Nunchuck's not third party, bro.
I don't mean third party. I mean
with the console. I know what you're saying, EJ.
Like Sarah prefers the Joy-Con every day of the week when she's playing Animal Crossing over the Pro Controller. The Pro Controller is just too big and unwieldy for her. So it really is perspective. I choose to look at these as, by a large margin, the greatest handheld controls we've ever had. You get all the functionality of a real controller. You get a D-pad and sticks.
I think the DS has better controls.
I would agree with that too. The DS's D-pad is astounding.
Which one?
The original.
The one that sold for 1 year, or all of the ones that followed?
The one that sold for 1 year.
Yeah, those shoulder buttons are amazing. Their buttons are clicky. The D-pad is really sharp and responsive. It feels good to hold.
The clicky buttons on the Switch does float it pretty high for me. I love the micro switches. I wish more controllers utilize that technology, that responsiveness. It's why mice are fun to use. It's because that click. Love the click.
Let's put it in B.
But controllers don't use it for no reason.
Let's put it in B. I think there's no argument for it to go lower than B, and I think that there's enough holding it up that I don't know how it goes up to A.
What's in our A's right now?
Our A is GameCube, Wii U, Gamepad, and the NES Dogbone in that order.
All right, what's next?
Switch Pro, right?
It is the Switch Pro controller.
It is a really good looking controller. I really like the steering wheel rubber on the bottom with the smoky, translucent shell of the main body, and the size of the buttons. The whole visual identity of the Switch Pro controller is delightful. And they went with a highly standardized layout. It is the perfect amalgamation of previous ABXY layouts and then a 360 sort of look and feel. I really, really like it. There are some shortcomings. I do not know if you guys have had this problem, but I have had a very consistent problem with my Pro controllers where the bumpers are not very, they're very inconsistent, where I'll be pressing and holding the bumper as a digital switch. You would think I would just press and hold it, but it flickers in on and off. It's not registering my press all the time. It's highly specific to the bumpers. I don't know why.
The face buttons do the same thing. I have missed inputs all the time, and I think to me, again, I didn't have any Joy-Con drift, but I have had 4 Pro controllers that all have issues with missed inputs, both on the bumpers, absolutely, but also the face buttons. I'm playing Pokemon this week, and it happens all the time where I think I've double tapped when I need to double tap, and I haven't, so I double tap again, and then I've hit one too many times because there's just always missed inputs. This controller's fine. To me, it's not better than any Xbox controller, maybe past the Duke. It's not better than any DualShock controller. I don't like how slick the sticks are. It's a perfectly reasonable option. It's the best option for the Switch. But I like the Wii U Pro controller more than this.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah,
it's lightweight. The battery life is great.
We are totally on different boats because I think the lighter controller makes it feel cheaper. It makes it feel more like a toy and less like a device that I'm using to control. It makes it feel less like it has technology inside of it for some reason. That is such a monkey brain
cheaper,
thing.
But
yeah, it feels cheaper.
I like the weight of the Pro controller.
Less fatigue.
I don't know if I could say that I've had missed inputs, but that's going to be top of
all
mind
the time.
every time I'm playing Mario with Tiffany now is damn, would I have hit that if I didn't have a missed input? I have no strong feelings about it. I think it's the best way to play Switch games by a country mile. But I have no strong feelings about it outside of that. Where would y'all slot this?
It's funny because this is clearly the best Nintendo controller.
Yeah, I just wanted to go to bat just visually. It's just really, really pretty looking. It looks really nice. It's modern. The USB-C control, the charging is super nice. All the different variants.
Can you believe Nintendo beat Microsoft and Sony to USB-C? In what fucking world?
Yeah, it's weird.
Insane.
Good for them. Thank God.
I was thinking about this. I know we're so over right now, but I was thinking about this today about how I kind of miss the previous era of Nintendo, like just between their UI and just sort of this round, bubbly, like very Nintendo-esque design philosophy. And there's something very nostalgic about it. But on the other hand, I'm like, they finally caught up with the rest of the world, and I think it is infinitely better. Kind of torn down the middle on it. Where like I miss the whimsical, like you boot up a Wii or you turn on the Wii U and you're just like, this is Nintendo, the 3DS.
They overcorrected.
I don't think they well, maybe
a little, but I think they can steer back into that, reintroduce those things.
I prefer
in a more cohesive manner. Yeah, no, I mean it's great.
Be modern.
How hard could it be to put music in the background of the eShop or whatever?
Let's make a competent, functional eShop first. Let's just make it run well.
Exactly.
Chris, you said the thing about the fucking scroll wheels on a controller. I don't know if we need to open that can of worms right now, but I'm just like imagining.
Dude, we're talking about controllers.
Fuck,
might as well.
Dude, what a nightmare that would fucking be, dude. I'm not gonna lie. That's the last thing I want on my controller.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen. I don't know. The fact that Sakurai-san suggested it doesn't mean that it would ever happen. He's like, yeah, I would have put a scroll wheel on that thing because it'll be really easy to get through menus. This sounds like accidentally being brushed all the time. Like the cat comes up to get on your lap and accidentally toggles you 3 weapons to the right, and you're like, oh no, I'm in the middle of combat, and you have to toggle back, and it's gonna lose its like precision so quickly, I feel like, and it's gonna make it muddier.
I don't understand when he says it would make getting through menus easier. I'm like, what kind of menus? Like a linear vertical menu that is way too long? Yeah, scrolling to the bottom of that would be easier. But navigating a video game menu where you're navigating both vertically and horizontally, how, in what world would a scroll wheel make that more precise or even quicker? I don't understand the idea behind that.
I don't want to hear about navigating through menus from Sakurai. Sorry.
Please God. And I even said in the group chat, I was like, dude, scroll wheels have been standard inputs on PCs for decades, and they still don't do virtually anything. And it's because they suck. Like they're strictly utilitarian in getting to the bottom of a web page. Like when I have to use a scroll wheel in a PC game, like when I first started playing Warzone, everyone's like, you gotta use keyboard and mouse. And I'm trying to, dude, that's a whole other thing. I'm like, again, don't have the neuroplasticity for that, but I'm like, no, the scroll wheels fucking suck. Do not put one on my video game, and God forbid every Nintendo game now is going to implement some bullshit fucking scroll thing I have to do for menial things that I've been doing for decades. Please, God, don't do that to me.
The next Zelda game will just be a sequel to Tears of the Kingdom, but to break apart your things, you have to scroll both wheels as fast as you can.
Oh, dude. You joke, but that is like, Nintendo's like, we're innovating. That's innovative. We're breaking new ground here.
Oh, boy. I think that we still have 18. If you want to keep going, we have 18 controllers.
Well, no way in God's green earth we can do 18 more controllers at this pace.
We just need to start rapid firing.
Okay, so I was going to say we could do one of two things. We could stop, and this is a Nintendo controller tier list.
And Atari.
Grandpa Atari having his prune juice down in C tier. Or, yes, I could literally say controller name. You both give me a letter, and I give you a letter, and we see where we are, and we take no more than like a minute per controller.
That's fine. I can do that.
Oh my God. Okay, here we go.
I'm hanging if y'all are hanging. It's up to you guys.
Sony PlayStation, no sticks. Nick, letter.
C.
EJ, letter.
The controller itself would be a B, but because a lot of PlayStation games were fucking 3D games, it probably is a C.
I agree, and it's also the least comfortable of all the DualShocks for me. So I'm putting it in C tier next to Grandpa Atari. DualShock 1.
B.
It's B.
B? Yep, perfectly cromulent, does what it needs to do. I'm putting it bot B tier. We could fiddle with like specific tier placement. DualShock 2.
Right
B.
next to it. B.
It's the same
controller.
I'm going to put it slightly above for the form factor.
Wait,
the black is
it's the same thing.
but it's black.
Does anyone know, did they both have analog like buttons? That's so weird and unnecessary. Good for them.
Good for them. Kudos.
DualShock 3.
C.
Ooh.
I think they just get better linearly. Like the triggers are better on the DualShock.
Or am I thinking
3?
of the 6-axis? I can't remember.
The DualShock 3 is just slightly better than the DualShock 2. It's wireless. It's got the better triggers.
B then. B.
Okay, I'll put it I'll put it right above the DualShock 3. DualShock 4.
They're all the same.
DualShock 4.
Low B, bottom B. I don't like the PlayStation button, and I don't like the touchpad.
Touchpad is dumb, but the D-pad is better, and everything else is virtually the same. It is sleeker. It is more modern. It was a nice evolution.
That was the bad thing on the 3. The triggers were dog shit on the 3. They're sloped.
I like
backwards.
those things. I like those things, man.
No, your fingers slipping off all the time.
I don't know.
They fixed it in the DualShock 4.
They did. I would argue the DualShock 4 could be a high B, low A because the changing the form factor to be a little bit curved fits so much better in your hand than the really hard sort of protruding handles. I like the way that the shoulder buttons don't sit quite so high so that my finger rests a little more easily on them. And I liked using the touchpad. I liked that I could map specific things like swiping up to show me a quest objective, or swiping down to turn off my HUD, or swiping left to open my map. I liked that I could do that. I enjoyed the functionality of the touchpad.
I'm with you. I agree.
Is this above the Switch Pro controller?
To me, they're like equal. They both have their drawbacks and aren't comfortable for long. Like if I play for more than 2 hours with either of those controllers, I probably am going to have fatigue in my wrists and fingers, but not to like the DualSense's level by any stretch.
Can you even get 2 hours out of the DualShock 4?
Yes, come on.
Nice straw man.
You can play all day. You charge it every night. You're fine.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's not terrible. I don't know that I put it above the Switch Pro controller, so that it's gonna sit right in there. It's above the Joy-Con, but it's not above the Pro controller. Or we could go under the Joy-Con. DualSense, EJ.
The DualSense.
Give me a letter. Rapid fire. I know.
C or F, EJ?
It has to be C. It's a D tier controller, and the context of how they step their ergonomics back in their 5th iteration of the console make it even worse. But strictly looking at the controller itself, it's C. It's C. Fuck that controller.
I have no dog in this race. I've never even held the DualSense. I did play with the DualSense over at your place,
and
EJ.
you complained about it.
The DualShock 4 is bad too. So I mean, it's worse than DualShock 4. Whatever.
I'll put it top of C tier, which makes it the lowest PlayStation controller other than the original PlayStation controller.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're getting into Sega Genesis. Nick.
C.
Interesting. EJ.
Which one? The
OG 3 button.
3 button.
Oh gosh.
Not the one with like the weird wavy D-pad thing.
Wavy D-pad thing.
Yeah. Again, not having D tier is kind of rough. Like this. Yeah, it's a C.
Oh no.
We have Wii tier.
It's not Wii tier. Wii tier is his own unique brand of bad.
Wow. See, y'all really would put this in C.
Oh yeah.
Why?
3 buttons on a competitor to a console where you use 4 buttons a lot of the time. Does it even have triggers?
Yeah, no shoulders.
The D-pad fucking sucks. The weird circular. Yeah, no. Genesis controller sucks ass.
All right, I'll drop it in the bottom of C tier.
This predates the SNES, so I guess.
Did either of you play Sega Saturn?
No.
Then we're skipping Sega Saturn. Dreamcast. EJ.
Hilarious.
This is also a C, but it's kind of cool as fuck. I mean, it's definitely of the time. But dude, the VMUs or whatever you stuck in the top, it had the little GameCube stick on the left and a D-pad you could actually access if you needed it. But like, it's the fucking cords on the bottom of the controller instead of the top, which is like,
So
why?
weird. It's got a built-in clip that you can clip the cord to make it go up.
Just stupid design. It's a C. Yeah.
It's
cool
hilarious.
as fuck though, dude.
Nick, is that a C for you also?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, it's so sad.
it's as hilarious as any Wii controller, but I mean, it's also bad.
Oh, I love this controller. I think it's so cool. I love the VMU. I love the triangular pause button down towards the cord. Like
The VMU that has a little baby D-pad on it.
yes,
like, what
and
the fuck
that
are you
you
doing
can
with that?
and that you can play mini games in the VMU and then pop it back in and it's your memory card. I was like, this is so cool, but it's so stupid, but it's so cool.
Yeah, there's no way this thing is better than like a 64 controller. I mean, it's so kludgy and gross, but also it's rad as fuck.
I'll put it right below the 64 controller. Okay, we're getting into Xbox controllers, beginning with the Duke.
There's a reason they revised this controller. It would be a D. I get people love it, but there's a reason it changed.
Yeah, I'm pretty solid on C.
I would advocate for B tier on behalf of all the large-handed people everywhere. that the subsequent iterations of the original Xbox controller were fine. But I liked the heft of the Duke. I liked that I had something to hold on to. It looks great. I love that big fat fucking Xbox logo just staring me in the face. Like the audacity of Microsoft to be like, you're going to look at this and you're going to love it. Like this is what this is.
Every Xbox controller is better than this one, though.
I agree with that, but that's because I think they happen to make excellent controllers. So it's C tier. I'm putting it top of C.
Yeah.
I'm putting it top of C tier.
Sure.
I love that thing. All right. Revised original Xbox controller. Don't think it needs to go any higher than right above the Duke in C or the bottom of B for me.
Man, it's tough. It's like obviously the DNA.
The black and white buttons are bad.
Right. The weird buttons on the bottom of the fucking right thing. The D-pad is awful, which is a running theme. They've got the start and select button, again, right under the left thumb. Like, it's a C. It's C. It's marginally better than the Duke, but not meaningfully enough.
Looking at it more, yeah.
I'll put it top
I'm fine
C.
with C.
It doesn't feel, it still doesn't feel very good to hold also, that this sort of like, the handles just kind of like drip down from the body, and that's, as we've discussed, like it doesn't really work. Okay. Xbox 360 controller. I think we, honest to God, have our first fucking ultra goated double S candidate.
No.
There is nothing wrong with this controller. It is a perfect controller. Everything feels good. Everything looks good. It is incredibly comfortable to hold. It's got the offsetting sticks. Both of the shoulder buttons and the shoulder buttons and the bumpers feel really fucking good. Like, I don't know. There are other later model Xbox controllers that also I think could go into Ultra Go to Double S, but this controller is perfect. Like, there's nothing wrong with this controller.
It's a little too small. The D-pad is probably the worst on any mainstream controller in the history of controllers. The proprietary connection to plug in if you weren't using AA batteries, which by this time, why the fuck do we still have AA batteries in our controllers? Like, there's clearly enough drawbacks on this thing to keep it out of the tippity-toppity, but it is the gold standard for what controllers became. I think it's firmly in S tier.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Like bottom S.
Below the Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy. That's crazy.
Every controller after that is better. I mean, they continually get better, which is wild.
But for the drawbacks that we like expressed with regards to the Super Nintendo controller, and I think we expressed less drawbacks on the 360 controller, but and I love the Super Nintendo controller, but this is a really fucking good controller.
It's
really
a good controller. But again, the D-pad is like probably the worst ever. Like, it is a horrific D-pad.
Which is minimized by D-pads not being used for games,
As
really.
much.
Like, it's for navigating menus, and that's about it. Like, you're not actually controlling a character with that D-pad. You're selecting your gun or whatever.
So are we even going to have anything to go in Ultra Goated except the extremely expensive and almost never in stock one-off that EJ asked me specifically to put in that isn't even the main Xbox Series X controller? Is that the only controller that's going to be a candidate for that?
I think the standard S is also double goated S or whatever you call it. Like, I think it is like nigh perfect.
It's the greatest controller ever made. It takes every aspect of the 360 and takes it to the next level. Every aspect. The sticks are better, beautiful texture. The D-pad is clicky. It's still not perfect for certain things, but it's a massive improvement. The responsiveness of the face buttons, start and select right where they fucking should be. The triggers slightly curved up, beautifully textured. I mean, it is a meaningful upgrade over the 360, and then they further refine the D-pad on like the newest iterations, but it is basically the same as the Xbox One's design.
You're gonna have to put these in my hand then, because just looking at them on the screen, it does not look like it would be as comfortable as an Xbox controller with that sort of like concave face. And just the way that it's like a bed for your hands. It's like, let me tuck you in. Like, please come in.
I gotta tell you, I own a box of custom 360 controllers, custom painted, modded D-pads. I have special colorways, the chrome purple, the freaking all gray, the one that Nick had. I loved that controller. It was my go-to controller on PC for a decade. The Xbox One and Xbox Series controller, just the standard Series controller, is so good. Like, I cannot use a 360 controller anymore. I almost hate that controller now. the Series controller is so good. I hate using the 360 controller. And that's an S tier. I used it for a decade. That was my go-to. The Series is like such a fucking upgrade. It is perfect. And Microsoft, they do a lot wrong, but not controllers.
Well, okay, so we got Xbox One, which if memory serves, that's the one that has the like slightly recessed Xbox logo in the center of the controller towards the top. That was the one, right?
That particular one actually has a lot of issues with the bumpers that they had to fix after 2 years. So that particular one with the recessed logo, if that is separate on your thing, I would put that below the 360.
And though they did actually do a real D-pad with the Xbox One controller, it was fine. It was still not ideal. I do like the kind of cup that they've got going on now with like the clickiness. I just love the click, man. I'm so click pilled.
That's good. That's good. There's 2 versions of the Xbox One controller. That's the original one, and that is a pain in the ass.
Okay, and then this is the Series X.
Where's the Ouya gonna go?
We're gonna talk about it. You would put the one in S tier
I'd put it like top A, the one, like the original one.
above the GameCube controller.
No, the GameCube is bottom S. You're not gonna move me from that.
That's fine, but the GameCube controller is in A tier at this moment. So you are saying you do not want the one above the GameCube controller.
Correct.
Okay. And Nick, do you have any opinions on the Xbox X controller? Is it as he says? I've not used it.
It is fantastic. I will never use a different controller for my PC gaming unless one ever is better. It's a hard mountain to climb.
It's such a good controller.
Jesus Christ. Okay. I'm gonna have to feel this fucking thing. All right, EJ, this fucking modular monstrosity that you sent over to me. What is this fucking controller?
Oh, this feels good. So it doesn't actually have to make the list, but it is the only actual meaningful improvement over the Series controller. This is the Elite Series 2. It's got 4 back paddles, not shitty buttons, paddles, which are infinitely better, much easier to use, much less resistant, doesn't cramp your fingers to use. They're just little clicky little buttons. They're amazing. Not everyone wants back buttons. I require back buttons for competitive gaming. The D-pad options are great. The stick options are great. Everything pops off really easy magnetically. Obviously not standard. You've got trigger locks, and it's beautiful. It is like, it's got this nice matte finish. It's got this texture all the way around the back. It's got issues, stick drift issues, but what controller doesn't apparently? I've had to send one back, but I have a closet full of
Sony
unopened
consoles?
ones.
No, they've had stick drift recently too.
Yeah.
PS4 and PS5 have both had pretty bad problems. Not as bad as Switch, obviously, but
That said, yeah, I probably won't put it on the list just because that's such a specific model of controller. We haven't really done that with any of the other ones, but
I just wanted to shout it out. If anyone's looking for a great fucking controller, Nick, I know you don't like do a lot of competitive gaming, but if ever you were like, I really wish I had a back button, this is the controller to do it with. It's better than any scuff controller. Does that one have back buttons?
no, I'm just saying, like, I did the design labs.
Yeah, I
Got
love
my
them.
Custom controller that's got the bubblegum pink. Like, come on, good option. But yeah, the Elite is like 200 plus. So Bob Hobble.
Bob Pobble, baby. The black and purple with the white face buttons. Oh, it's so fucking good, man.
The anodized purple.
PC
Looking good.
gamers and your money. All right. Have any of us actually used the Steam controller?
I have. It was weird.
Bad.
Great. Do we need to chart it? Where do we
Nah.
put it?
Yeah.
Top of Wii tier.
It's like a worse version of the Steam Deck's controls, and the Steam Deck controls are annoying.
That's funny. Last and least is my dear Ouya. Which I left it in here. I was glad it was there when I pulled this template up, and I left it in there because we talked about it a little bit when we did the Ouya anniversary look back, that this was a very comfortable controller. For somebody, EJ, like you, who really likes lightweight controllers, remember that they were manufacturing these as cheaply as possible. This thing, one AA battery that slides into one of the sides, one of the handles on the controller, but they constructed it so that like the weight was balanced when the battery was in it. It was very, very lightweight. It felt really good and easy to hold. The curve up towards like the center was really comfortable. The offset sticks The buttons were clicky. The shoulder buttons were okay. And the D-pad was good because remember, this was a lot of like mobile game type games basically and indies and stuff where like a D-pad was really helpful. It's a good controller. It's a solid B tier controller.
Is the middle a touchpad?
Nope.
It's just black.
Yep.
Okay. I am going to share my screen real quick so Nick, you can verify that I'm generating a list without doing any fuckery.
Okay. I'm watching your stream.
Hitting randomized. EJ, Nick, Chris.
That's fucking hilarious.
That backfired. Didn't it?
So fucking funny. Holy shit.
That's great. Okay.
Chris, you should send a screenshot if you can of the current order.
And then we can read it out real quick. I thought this was going to be so much fucking quicker, dude. What the fuck, dude? This happens every tier list. We go 3.5 hours. We say, not doing that again.
We can't help ourselves. We're sick in the head. Now we got to play. Chris has to use your Elite controller or just the Xbox Series controller. And we got to play Big Buck Hunter with the stupid fucking Wiimote.
Fine.
Yes.
Four of the things.
Do. All right, it's sending.
See, unfortunately, my retro setup is like in my closet here to my left. It would make it very difficult for all of us to gather around and play something. But luckily, I have like 19 CRTs in the garage, so we can just wheel one of those in and set it out in the front room and gather around like the good old days. Stick it on the coffee table right in front of us, you know?
Images in the chat. EJ, what are you doing?
Look at that bell curve. Yeah, that's nice. Any limits on movement if we can only do one slot above and below?
Ooh. I think that's reasonable, right? Like, I don't think it would
Skipping
be
Wii tier?
Skipping Wii tier, yes. That's the meme. We always end up with a meme tier, like the Game B tier in the fucking Nintendo consoles.
That's good. That's
so
good.
stupid.
That's good.
Okay. Yeah, what are you doing? What's your move? I think I know what it is, but
Can we maybe just agree on a couple of quick things before we like make sweeping changes?
yes.
Like both NES controllers do not deserve to go above any of the DualShocks. Like that's crazy, right?
Nick, would you agree?
I would agree with that.
Like at least go to bottom B tier. Like that's
Okay.
kind of nuts.
Yeah, that's fine.
C
Yeah,
tier
I'm cool with
looks
that.
good. The dog bone in A is like such an underdog story, bro.
Underdog bone story?
Oh, snatched it. This is a good list. This is a good list. I am really struggling. I guess we can stay in bottom Wii tier, and that's as good as F.
It's so funny that we only have the one F controller and it's like such a niche little like halfway side product for the NES.
I'm gonna move GameCube to bottom S, and I will leave the N64 alone, even though it deserves to be an F tier controller.
It's really big of you, EJ.
Yeah,
The
I hate that
GameCube,
controller.
I'm glad you're acting out of love and not out of hate. The GameCube controller has been moved to the bottom of S tier. Nick.
Looking at this list, I think it's clear to me that the Switch Pro controller needs to be in A tier, up from B. It does not hang with the Joy-Cons and the DualShock 4 or both NES controllers. It belongs with the vaunted company of the Xbox One controller and the Wii U gamepad and the dog bone. Like that's the category it belongs
Would
in.
you put it below the
That's
dog
funny.
bone? Where do you put it in A tier?
Bro, it's above the dog
It's better
bone
than
and
the
below
dog
the Wii
bone.
U gamepad.
yeah, well, yeah. This is a weird list. It's better than both of those.
Everything's relative. Everything's relative. Okay, the Switch Pro controller has been moved to A tier in between the Wii U gamepad and the dog bone. What do I want to do?
You're looking at that Dreamcast controller, I can tell.
No. That's my love for the Dreamcast controller is pure bullshit. I'm not going to subject anybody else to. It's like it doesn't matter. Okay.
The Dreamcast controller is better than the 64 controller, like for sure.
I don't know. The bottom
it's
side
ergonomic.
cord is a big fucking pain in the ass.
That is dumb. It is stupid.
Bro, the Nintendo 64 Rumble Pack crawled so the VMU could rise to the heavens.
R.I.P. the Dreamcast, just in general. I'm gonna move the DualShock 4 to the bottom of A tier. It was at the top of B tier, and I'm moving it to the bottom of A tier. I feel that the DualShock did so much well and meaningfully moved the industry in the direction that it badly needed to go with the advent of 3D gaming. that I feel like one of these controllers deserves to be an A tier. And for me, the DualShock 4 is like far and away the best one to hold and to use out of all of them.
The DualShock 4 is better than the Dogbone and the Wii U gamepad.
I don't think it's better than the gamepad.
Maybe
I've also used the DualShock 4 hundreds of more hours than the gamepad, but
I've used the DualShock 4 a fuckload.
Even to the point now that I hate the DualSense so much, I'm buying PS4 versions of video games now physically just so I can still use my DualShock 4 over the DualSense.
That's more about you hating the DualSense than it is you loving the DualShock 4.
This is true.
I will put it below the Switch Pro controller and above the Dogbone. But I am moving it into A tier. All right.
Seems like a good compromise. This is a good list.
All right, starting from the bottom. In F tier, we have the NES Max. In the all by itself, the only one in F tier. We have the Wii tier, which builds from the Wiimote to the pseudo Dogbone to the Proto Pro controller to the Steam controller. In C tier, we move from the Sega Genesis to the OG PS1 controller, the Atari joystick, Sega Dreamcast, Nintendo 64, DualSense, the Duke, and the OG Xbox non-Duke at the top of C tier. In B tier, the Ouya holding it down. For all six of us who still remember the Ouya, the NES controller, the NES Advantage, DualShock 1, DualShock 2, DualShock 3 in order, the Wii U Pro controller, and the Joy-Con now at the top of B tier, which feels appropriate given how much we were like, what do we do with this? In A tier, the little controller that could, the Dogbone of
the NES Dogbone.
How did this happen? Because I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Happen.
Yeah,
let it.
It's like a Super Nintendo controller, but not at the same time, and slightly less sexy. So A feels right. I don't know. The DualShock 4, Switch Pro controller, Wii U gamepad, and the Xbox One at the top of A tier. Getting into rarefied air in S tier, we have the GameCube controller, the Xbox 360, and the Super Nintendo coming in second overall place, which surprised the hell out of me, if I'm being totally honest, that y'all agreed that it could go that high in S tier. And the Ultra go to double S, the Xbox Series X controller, which I'm very much looking forward to spending some time with.
That's a tier list. That's a good tier list right there. That feels right.
Yeah, I don't have any, and I think part of it, like getting rid of the pissing match, like our ability to like fuck with each other's like last word picks. I think that went a long way towards everybody feeling really good and not feeling like they got swooped in the 11th hour.
Only promotions.
This is a great ass list. Another Console Crusade tier
consensus.
list. Console Crusade consensus. A triple C. A C cubed.
The Consensus Crusade podcast. We have a title for this week's episode.